Paul Thomas Anderson is hands down one of the greatest American filmmakers of all time, with movies like Boogie Nights, There Will Be Blood, and The Master. Let's break down Paul Thomas Anderson's career.
Hello, movie friends. Welcome back to Raiders of the Lost podcast, the ultimate film and TV podcast. And today we're going to be breaking down the career of one of our favorite directors, Paul Thomas Anderson, who stands atop the apex mountain of modern filmmakers. I think he is a true visionary. He's one of those directors where when I watch his movies, I feel like I'm taking in a novel. They're so dense, they're so rich, they're so specific. Nobody makes movies quite like Paul Thomas Anderson. He's been like that from the get-go with Hard Eight and Boogie Nights, and now he's gone into movies like Phantom Thread and Licorice Pizza the last few years. He is an undeniable icon of cinema history already with only 9 movies.
And in a tour of 9 feature-length films, which include Hard Eight, Boogie Nights, Magnolia, Punch Drunk Love, There Will Be Blood, The Master, Inherent Vice, Phantom Thread, and Licorice Pizza. What a career so far from the 13-time Academy Award nominated filmmaker with 0 wins.
0 wins!
An 8-time BAFTA nominee with 1 win. He won Best Original Screenplay for Licorice Pizza, and 2002 Cannes Best Director winner for Punch Drunk Love, which he shared.
Yes.
So he gets a lot of nominations, but no recognition and wins. But, I mean, he's hands down one of the greatest filmmakers alive, if not in his prime, the best filmmaker living right now.
Paul Thomas Anderson was my favorite director for a long time. In my teens, into my late teens, and into my early 20s, he was my number one guy. But that's until I discovered the real breadth of Martin Scorsese and what he has done and contributed to cinema. And so slowly, Martin Scorsese took the edge. But Paul Thomas Anderson is still my second favorite director. And There Will Be Blood and The Master are very important films to me. Boogie Nights as well. The first major exposure I had to him was probably There Will Be Blood. And then I think we might have seen Boogie Nights while it was on with our brothers, but I didn't have much of a memory. And then after There Will Be Blood, I watched Magnolia and Boogie Nights and Hard Eight on repeat. I was obsessed with Magnolia at one point in my life when I was like 18, 19. That's an incredible film. And just what I love about PTA, and he's gone by several monikers, P.T. Anderson, PTA, now Paul Thomas Anderson. Every one of his films is very different. He never repeats himself. He never makes the same movie twice. He likes to tackle very specific kinds of individuals. And oftentimes he likes to approach his writing in terms of, let me find an interesting career and try to write a character piece in that career, whether it be dressmaking, whether it be pornography, whether it be oil business, whether it be a game show host.
Making toilet supplies.
Making toilet supplies, yeah. He finds these little niches of incredible stories, and he crafts them from he takes them from a career that he finds, and he crafts a story out of that, which I find really interesting. It's a great entryway for a character if they have an interesting job.
And I believe two of his movies are adapted from novels. So obviously we have
Inherent Vice and There Will Be Blood.
Inherent Vice and There Will Be Blood are adapted from movies. There Will Be Blood very loosely based off Oil by Upton Sinclair, really the first 100 pages or so. But I would say that Inherent Vice is a little more true to the book than There Will Be Blood. But other than that, he's an incredible writer, which is one of his greatest strengths. And I would like to start off with ranking Thomas Anderson's movies. So this is tough to do. He's made 9 movies, but how do you rank his movies? I shot my shot, and this is what I came up with. So number 1, There Will Be Blood. Number 2, Boogie Nights. Number 3, The Master. Number 4, Phantom Thread. Number 5, Magnolia. Number 6, Punch Drunk Love. Number 7, Licorice Pizza. Number 8, Inherent Vice. And number 9, Hard Eight.
It's a list that's going to upset people regardless.
Absolutely.
Because then people are going to be like, why is Punch Drunk Love so low?
Why is Licorice Pizza so low? But I love every single one of these movies.
Yeah, so my ranking, oh my God, this is tough. I'm going to go Hard Eight at number 9 as well. And then I'm going to go with Inherent Vice at 8, Licorice Pizza at 7, Punch Drunk Love at 6.
Are you reading off my list?
No, I'm just thinking.
He's thinking while he's reading off my list.
Magnolia at 5.
He's still reading off my list.
The Master at 4.
Finally a change.
Boogie Nights at 3. Phantom Thread at 2. and then There Will Be Blood number 1.
Wow, Phantom Thread at number 2.
I praise. I think it's a really special movie.
It is.
I think it just ages better every time I see it. It really does.
Ages like fine wine, even though it's not that old of a movie,
Yeah, it's true.
2017,
That's
but
true.
still, it's such a sensational film. There's nothing, I've never seen anything like it before.
And yeah, I mean, I love Boogie Nights and I mean, they're all masterpieces. It's hard to rank.
I wouldn't say all of his movies are masterpieces.
Those 4 I said.
Oh, the top 4, gotcha.
Did you let me finish?
Well, you just said it vaguely, ambiguously that they're all masterpieces. I thought you were I assumed you were talking about every single movie, but I guess not.
Those 4.
I guess not.
Even Magnolia is a masterwork in some capacity. But what's interesting about PTA is he has evolved as a filmmaker, and hit the movies he's making now. He's actually gone through his transformation of starting out quite simple with Hard 8, and then he's such a big fan of Robert Altman. Robert Altman, we've talked about it many times in this podcast. He made huge ensemble films, intersecting storylines and characters like woven throughout each other, and most of his films were set in that structure. And so he's actually PTA's favorite director, Robert Altman. He actually assisted him on one of his films. One of Robert Altman's last films, PTA worked as like his assistant, even though he had already made 2 movies, just to be with him making a movie and I think learn from him. And they grew a great friendship, and Paul Thomas Anderson actually dedicated There Will Be Blood to Robert Altman. So at the end of the credits, it says for Robert Altman, or dedicated to Robert Altman. Very, very close relationship they ended up having, but PTA always calls him his favorite filmmaker. Magnolia, Boogie Nights, those are the 2 big ensembles, interwoven storylines, connected. Also, the camera work is very Altman and Scorsese-esque. Lots of push-ins, lots of very showy long takes. He'll still do long takes, but they're much more subtle and much more subdued, whereas Boogie Nights, you have that iconic opening shot going from outside the club all the way through the club, dancing and finishing in the back room where Marky Mark's doing the dishes.
No, it doesn't finish back
I'm
there.
sorry. Later, it finishes on Burt Reynolds.
It finishes on Mark.
Yes.
The shot ends on Mark looking at Burt
That's
Reynolds
it.
while
That's
he's
it.
cleaning up tables.
That's it. Thank you.
Gotcha.
And then there's a couple other long takes in there. And also, Magnolia has a bunch of long takes. One of them is walking through the hallways of the game show set, actually going up different floors that we think they actually filmed it on the same floor, moving the set around. But that's like a 3-minute long take, very complex. And then with the Punch Drunk Love and There Will Be Blood, instead of going with this huge thing, he just started going with a more singular vision, one lead character, and just following them. And in a lot of ways, I think that ended up being the ultimate version of his voice as an artist. Not that the ensembles aren't great, but they do have a lot of Altman's fingerprints on them. Whereas Punch Drunk Love and There Will Be Blood, I think, are wholly PTA, everything he learned about filmmaking, and he finally, I think, found his own voice completely. Then we get The Master, Inherent Vice, Phantom Thread, Licorice Pizza, for the most part singular films, although there are strong supporting characters, but we're not moving around different environments. We're basically staying in one location, one road, basically.
One character arc.
But what's interesting is with Licorice Pizza, he kind of went back to the L.A. small-scale movie that he started with. Hard 8 starts in L.A. and then they go to Vegas. Very similar vibes. I look at Licorice Pizza as a sister to Hard 8 in a lot of ways.
Absolutely, and Punch Drunk Love. I mean, a lot of his movies take place in the San Fernando Valley, L.A., Los Angeles. That's, Van Nuys, Studio City, Sherman Oaks, San Fernando Valley. Boogie Nights takes place in San Fernando Valley. So that's a major theme to his movies, is being from Los Angeles and making his films here. Now,
so yeah, that's Boogie Nights, Magnolia, Punch Drunk Love, Inherent Vice, and Licorice Pizza. 5 films in L.A. That's crazy.
That's a lot. How about we do a little background on Paul Thomas Anderson, and then we'll get into his filmography and his movies and everything.
Fill us in, man.
So, let me pull this up real quick.
I know you did a lot of research. I'm excited to hear
I am an expert on PTA now. So, Paul Thomas Anderson was born in Studio City in Los Angeles in the San Fernando Valley, obviously, to Edwina and Ernie Anderson. Ernie was an actor who was the voice of ABC and a Cleveland television late-night horror host known as Ghoulardi, after whom Anderson named his production company. Anderson grew up in the San Fernando Valley, one of 4 siblings. He has 5 half-siblings by his father's first marriage. He had a troubled relationship with his mother, but close with his father, who encouraged him to be a writer or director. Anderson attended a number of schools, including Buckley, John Thomas Dye School, Campbell Hall School, Cushing Academy, and Montclair Prep. He was involved in filmmaking at a very young age and never really had an alternative plan to directing films as a career. He made his first film when he was 8 years old, started making films on Betamax video cameras that his father bought in 1982. He later started using 8mm film, but realized that video was easier. He began writing in his teen years and experimenting with the Bolex 16mm camera. After years of experimenting with standard fare, he wrote and filmed his first real production as a senior in high school at Montclair Prep at 17 years old, using money he earned cleaning cages at a pet store. The film was a 30-minute mockumentary shot on video called The Dirk Diggler Story about a pornography star. The story was inspired by John Holmes, who also served as a major inspiration for Boogie Nights. So he made this when he was 17 years old. Pretty wild. He then attended Santa Monica College before having 2 semesters as an English major at Emerson College in Boston, where he was taught by David Foster Wallace, and only 2 days at NYU before he began his career as a production assistant on television, films, music videos, and game shows in Los Angeles and New York City. Feeling that the materials shown to him at film school turned the experience into homework or a chore, Anderson decided to make a 20-minute film that would be his college. For $10,000 made up of gambling winnings, his girlfriend's credit card, and the money his father set aside for him for college, Anderson made Cigarettes and Coffee in 1993, a short film connecting multiple storylines with a $20 bill. The film was screened at the 1993 Sundance Festival Shorts program. He was then accepted into the Sundance Labs. He planned to expand the film to feature length and was invited to that film program in 1994. And then Michael Canton Jones served as Anderson's mentor. He was the director. He saw him as someone with the talent and a fully formed creative voice, but not much hands-on experience, and gave him some hard and practical lessons. Now, he dropped out of NYU just after 2 days because his teacher in his first lecture claimed that anyone who wants to make a film like Terminator 2 Judgment Day should leave immediately. And I probably would have done the same thing because I love T2. That movie is fucking awesome. If I could ever make T2, that would be amazing.
Oh, yeah.
So, clearly, a lot of professors out there, they've never amounted to much, and they claim to be experts in their fields. And it's pretty pretentious, and I think that's probably what he felt like.
Yeah, and he also, his father, being that radio host, had a lot of connections in Hollywood, and that's actually how he got Phillip Baker Hall to star in his short film Coffee and Cigarettes. Phillip Baker Hall actually appeared in a lot of Robert Altman movies, but he was a pretty notable actor in the 70s and 80s before he started working with PTA. So his connections with his father allowed him to connect to Phillip Baker Hall, who ended up being a recurring actor in many of his early films.
You can really look to the 1970s as really a massive influence on Paul Thomas Anderson's career, because his films kind of feel like in that era.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and he cites Scorsese, obviously, besides Altman, Jonathan Demme, Stanley Kubrick, as his main influences as a filmmaker. I mean, there's no Paul Thomas Anderson without Martin Scorsese. And there's no Paul Thomas Anderson without Steven Spielberg as well. He loves Steven Spielberg movies. He loves how Spielberg captures magic and creates magic. And I think Paul Thomas Anderson does his own form of magic with his storytelling. Every time I leave a theater after I see a Paul Thomas Anderson movie, or I'm just sitting there after the movie ends, I feel like I just seen a magic trick. I just seen the magic of cinema. Not many filmmakers can make me feel that. Spielberg's absolutely one of them, and Paul Thomas Anderson is one as well.
And speaking of some of those filmmakers, especially Scorsese and Altman, they had a lot of influence on his style. Like I said earlier, he did a lot of push-ins, and not just slow push-ins. He did the very fast push-ins. You see a lot of that in Scorsese films, especially films like Goodfellas. You see a lot of that in Robert Altman films. Also, he still is and always has been a huge fan of the dolly track shot. He will do dolly track shots left and right, just like David Fincher. Although he films them a little bit differently. Fincher likes to do dolly shots at a slight angle, slightly looking up. And then PTA likes to do his dolly shots tracking perfectly parallel with the character. You will see tracking shots all over the place in PTA films. That's something that Robert Altman loved to do. Scorsese too, but definitely more so Altman. He liked to use the cranes a lot, which Altman used a lot. Obviously, that Boogie Nights shot started with the crane. So a lot of crane work in Magnolia as well. And the oneers as well. Lots of big oneers in his early films. He also, like I said, liked the ensembles, but he actually, what's different from his latter films is he liked to approach the idea of crime in his films, whether it be Hard 8, Boogie Nights. They fall into some pretty difficult crime situations at the second half of Boogie Nights.
Yeah, Alfred Molina's character.
Yeah. Also, Magnolia, there's some crime in there as well. And then he ended up kind of straying away from the theme and genre of crime, pretty much avoiding it entirely for the rest of his career, Obviously, Daniel Day-Lewis does some criminal practices, but you wouldn't call that a crime movie.
Daniel Plainview.
I mean, Daniel Plainview, he's just like, it is him.
He's a murderer.
He is him. He kills someone, but you wouldn't say it's like a crime movie, or you wouldn't put it in that genre. But that's a genre that he approached pretty early on in his career, and since then he's kind of avoided it. Something that always has been present in his films is when he's not doing a soundtrack, which he's done for Boogie Nights, he's done for Licorice Pizza, and he's done for most of Phantom Thread. And The Master is he likes to have very strange music composed for the films, whether it be pulling music, so there's some Penderecki and There Will Be Blood, or hiring a composer with a very eclectic kind of style. More recently, the last several films, he's been working with Johnny Greenwood, who I think perfectly captures what he's going for.
Punch Drunk Love, I think, is really terrific because he really creates this erratic percussion for a lot of the sequences to capture Barry and his mind and what's going on, the chaos of his life and his anxiety and his stress, as well as the fantastical Hollywood love story fanfare kind of orchestral music at the same time. So I think the Punch Drunk Love score is really terrific to that movie.
They actually used the idea of a circus for the theme of the music for that film.
Makes sense.
So they use a lot of circus instruments and sounds for the design of that score.
And you can listen if you listen and watch Punch Drunk Love. It reminds you so much of watching There Will Be Blood with the Penderecki stuff, as well as what the influence of Penderecki on Johnny Greenwood.
Johnny Greenwood actually worked with Penderecki, and he was his protege, and so that's why he seemed to be a perfect fit. And then since then, PTA has established a very strong relationship with both him and Tom York by directing a lot of music videos for Radiohead and Tom York's solo stuff. So I think that Johnny Greenwood just seems to be the perfect composer for him. And PTA clearly loves working with him because Johnny Greenwood has now done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 movies of his. Wait, he didn't do any music for Licorice Pizza. So his last 4 movies, Licorice Pizza works because of the soundtrack.
Yeah, I mean, Paul's one of those great filmmakers who picks great music for movies when he's going the soundtrack route. I mean, Boogie Nights, great all-time album. Licorice Pizza, all-time album. He's terrific when he's picking music for movies, just like Scorsese. He knows what the hell he's doing. Some great soundtracks for his music and for those kinds of films.
And he also obviously loves film. He likes to shoot on mostly 35 millimeter, but he shot The Master on 65 millimeter, which looks outstanding.
We saw it on 70 mil projection. Yeah,
it was incredible. He will always shoot on film. He's actually one of the filmmakers who have helped negotiate a deal with Kodak in Hollywood to keep Kodak production facilities going so they can keep making Kodak film. He, Scorsese, Nolan, and a bunch of other filmmakers, J.J. Abrams, who love to shoot on film, are working towards that. And his film aesthetic, in terms of the lighting, is very practical, very much like the 70s, very much like Jonathan Demme and Scorsese. This practical kind of lighting. Also, Robert Altman, he likes to use a lot of natural lighting. If he's using sunlight or daylight, he likes to shoot with honesty in the filmmaking and practicality in the lighting, and that's something really special. And there's something about the writing where he always has these, like, he likes to write about wayward, lost characters. That's something you see a lot in PTA films, and I really enjoy that. The Master, Freddie Quill is kind of lost in The Master, actually very lost in The Master. Dirk Diggler is lost in Wayward in the opening of Boogie Nights. John in Hard 8 is very lost in the opening of Hard 8. Everyone in Magnolia is lost. Alana in Licorice Pizza, 29 years old and just lost.
25.
25. She doesn't know what she's doing. And Barry in Punch Drunk Love also. So he has this tendency, he likes to approach people who they're not really broken from a tragic past, but they are still trying to find themselves in the world. The only one that I would say that doesn't apply to is obviously Daniel Plainview, who's just from day one, from frame one, he knows what he's doing, what he wants, and he goes to get it. He's someone who never really transforms in terms of being in a downward trend and then lifting himself up. He's just always going from the start to finish.
He's just waiting to find the silver.
Exactly.
In the oil.
Exactly. Like, he is the same. And in terms of his cinematography, like I said earlier, very complex, a very moving camera, but now he will move the camera, but it's much more subtle. And he actually is a fan of more static filmmaking now, moving the camera less, lingering on characters, and actually shooting with quite a lot of static frames or just a camera on a tripod with a simple tilt. But he will still do long takes, he'll still move the camera, but he likes to go about it in a much more subtle and simple way.
The average frame or the average cut in a movie, I believe, is like 2.1 seconds.
Wow.
Or maybe it's even shorter nowadays, but the average cut in a Paul Thomas Anderson movie is over 13 seconds because he just loves to do long takes, not just like the oneers like Boogie Nights or something like that, or Punch Drunk Love. There's some great oneers. He just loves long take filmography and capturing moments, and it adds so much to the characters and the situations and really putting you in these scenes and with these people. It really makes it feel so realistic because he has so much to tell, and it helps him with his narrative storytelling, be able to do these long takes, which takes a lot of attention to detail and a lot of practice and a lot of work, which is one of his great strengths, is his insane attention to detail and production details, as well as incredible writing and dialogue. It might be his best strength is writing. Not a lot of directors write every movie they do. I mean, Scorsese doesn't write every movie he does anymore. And I mean, Tarantino's one of those guys. Nolan's one of those guys. Greta Gerwig writes her movies. But a lot of directors write their own scripts. But I think what Paul Thomas Anderson does is so unique, and everyone says that, you know, Tarantino writes the best dialogue out there, but I would argue that Paul Thomas Anderson's up there as well when it comes to writing authentic, realistic dialogue that really sounds like someone would say in real life. Or when it comes to a director with characters, he understands his characters so well. He knows them. That's why he's able to write such great dialogue. I think that's one of his great strengths is he knows his characters better than maybe any other director when they're writing their movies and directing their movies, as well as creating memorable characters. They're all superstars in my mind when I think about the history of cinema.
Yeah.
Like, they're all so memorable. Even somebody like Barry in Punch Drunk Love, who makes plungers for a living, toilet supplies. I love this character so much, and he's so unique and interesting. And also, Paul Thomas Anderson is sensational at directing actors. Whenever you're seeing an actor in a Paul Thomas Anderson movie, you know you're probably going to get a career best performance out of them. I mean, how many has he pulled out of? He's got 9 Oscar-nominated actors for his movies, with only one win, unfortunately. I think it's just Daniel Day, one for There Will Be Blood. But my goodness, the direction of actors in his movies is sensational. They always turn out the best performances in their entire careers. I mean, you could argue Julianne Moore in Boogie Nights is one of her best performances ever.
And Magnolia.
Magnolia, she's terrific. They're all, I mean, then also seeing the talent of Phillip Seymour Hoffman so early on, giving him shots and giving him roles. I mean, he was in Hard 8.
He's the crapshooter in Hard 8.
He's in Hard 8.
Giving him a hard time.
He's incredible. Just seeing the potential of someone like Phillip Seymour Hoffman.
And John C. Reilly.
Yes.
Nobody believed in John C. Reilly.
He's awesome.
Yeah, he
great. Really is.
But also to pull out surprising performances like Josh Brolin in Inherent Vice is hilarious, and he had never done anything like that before, like being like the comedic joke part of the film, and he nailed it. Like, that's surprising. Like, no, I didn't see that coming from Josh Brolin, but he's so funny. Like when he's eating the chocolate banana and like he's like deep throating it in his car. And when he kicks the door,
he just like walks on top of it and like adjusts his belt in like the weirdest way.
And also with Joaquin, because Joaquin, around the time he made The Master and Inherent Vice, he was coming off like being that weird actor, that documentary, the mockumentary I'm Not There. The public wasn't really sure what to make of Joaquin Phoenix.
He had a bunch of supporting roles, but never like huge leading roles, I feel like, for a while.
Joaquin?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was in a bunch of Jonathan Gray movies.
Yeah.
And they were very small films. We Own the Night with Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah.
He played his brother. That's a very underrated crime movie. Wahlberg plays the cop. Joaquin Phoenix plays the criminal brother. Really excellent film. Jonathan Gray. But I think the public just didn't know what to make of Joaquin. And he seemed to be like this weird, very serious, self-serious kind of guy. Obviously, The Master, everyone was like, oh, this guy's fucking insanely talented. But then with Inherent Vice, oh my God, this guy's hilarious. He's so funny in Inherent Vice. And I think that movie and Her came out around the same time. And those really curbed, I think, public opinion about Joaquin once he showed those other qualities to his acting. To do the comedy and then to do the romance. And Her is funny, too. He showed that he is very charming. And he's an excellent comedic actor, and physically comedic actor in Inherent Vice. So those two films showcased a new side to Joaquin. So I think PTA, also, I think most famously, Punch Drunk Love, Adam Sandler.
Yeah.
Nobody saw that coming.
Nobody.
So he was actually doing press for Magnolia at Cannes, I think, or something. He was at some festival. And the press were asking him what his next film was, and he said, "I'm writing a movie for Adam Sandler." And then all the journalists started laughing, because they thought he was
You
joking.
mean the guy from Happy Gilmore and Big Daddy?
Yeah, everybody thought he was joking, but he saw something in Adam Sandler that nobody else really saw or could think of, and he said that he was inspired because he loves Adam Sandler, but he was inspired watching him. He said that he could see like there could be this like brewing ferocity and anger inside of him that is just waiting to be unleashed, and like this fury. And that was like what inspired him to write the character of Barry for Punch Drunk Love.
Well, Barry is actually a lot similar to what Adam was doing his entire career, of like the man child.
Yes.
Really similar, of like this man baby who has this insane loud temper that comes out of nowhere, which is really funny to watch, as well as being silly. But he just used it in a different way. He pushed that energy
Yes.
and his style in a different direction.
It's the real version of that
Yeah,
character.
it kind of is.
Nobody
Yeah.
wants to be around him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This very lonely person, obviously giving him the family of the 7 sisters who've been berating him his entire life. He's emotionally shut off, but he really just wants to connect to somebody. He's trying to talk to people who call his business for plungers, like to have an emotional conversation with, because he has nobody to talk to, and it's just been built up with the rage and the anxiety and the stress. It's actually kind of similar to what he was doing before that.
It's the mature filmmaking and the realistic tone that shifts the perspective of the kind of performance. But you're right, it is essentially the same archetype.
Similar, yeah.
Obviously, it's not raunchy comedy, but it is funny. But it's like if this kind of person grew up to be 40 years old, they would be a weird dude, and nobody would really enjoy being around them.
Exactly.
That's a great point.
Some more strengths about Paul Thomas Anderson's filmmaking is his exciting and creative cinematography. He doesn't always have a moving camera. I know people always say that he's always got a moving camera. I mean, there's static shots in Boogie Nights.
That's
There's
not
static
true at
shots
all,
in
yeah.
There Will Be Blood. He does it often.
Yeah.
He moves the camera a lot. A lot of times it's very subtle. He likes to change up the positioning and do multiple shots with a single take, like we see famously in the There Will Be Blood scene when Eli Sunday comes to Daniel Plainview with the information about the farm that has oil. And that's an incredible sequence because it's really like 7 different shots made out of one take. So things like that's very creative. He does a lot of...
Paul Sunday.
Oh, I'm sorry, Paul
Yeah,
Sunday,
yeah,
not
no
Eli
worries.
Sunday. Eli is
In the opening,
my
first
bad.
act, yeah.
So Paul was
was the smart
he was the chosen one. He's got $5,000 cash in hand, 2 wells producing every week.
Prosperous little
I gave him $10,000 cash in hand. Now, but that's an example of what he likes to do. He does a ton of tracking shots and pushing in shots in all of his films, very subtle movements. But he's not an always moving camera filmmaker like a lot of people think he is, because they kind of hear that.
Yeah, that's not all true. Even his early films, he has plenty of static shots. And in a movie like Phantom Thread, in a movie like The Master, there's quite a lot of static photography without it even panning or tilting. And so I know people think that because the showy shots get the attention, but it's not at all true.
Did you notice the influence clearly of Paul Thomas Anderson on Oppenheimer?
Oh, yeah. That's what I said.
The close-ups
Yeah.
of Oppenheimer, it's just like what a lot of his style has been lately with The Master and Phantom Thread, these beautiful 65mm close-up shots. You're in a character's face, claustrophobic in these tight settings. And I was watching Oppenheimer for the first time, and I was thinking of Inherent Vice too, but I was thinking of The Master for sure.
Yeah, well, when we walked out of Oppenheimer, what did I say? It reminded me of 2 movies. Do you remember?
The Master and Phantom Thread?
No, I said There Will Be Blood and The Tree of Life.
Okay, yeah, Tree of Life for sure.
But where do you think PTA got it from? Jonathan Demme.
Yeah.
Jonathan Demme was famous for his close-ups, and I read an interview where Paul Thomas Anderson said that he was so jealous because he couldn't figure out how Jonathan Demme did it so well. These really tight close-ups that he managed to make so beautiful and intimate. And PTA, I think, is always trying to capture what Demme would do with his films. The big difference, though, is Demme, we've talked about many times, likes most of the time would like to have his actors look into the lens straight on. Plenty of times he wouldn't, but he was just incredible at capturing these incredible intimate close-ups of actors.
Paul Thomas Anderson's movies also have excellent pacing and editing. They move so well. They're fluid, and they don't feel long. They don't feel short. Even a movie like Magnolia that runs at like 2:23, 2 hours.
308.
Is it 3:08?
308.
I thought it was, it's 223 minutes, I think, or something like that. It's a long movie.
Yeah.
But you don't really feel it because it's paced so well, it's edited so well. So I think he does a great job at pacing his films. I think especially later on in his career, he hasn't made super long movies like that in a while. I would say the longest movie he's made since then is There Will Be Blood, probably. Because
yeah, well, the Master's 2 hours, Inherent Vice is 2 hours,
Phantom Thread's under 2.
It's under 2?
Yeah, it's under 2.
And then Licorice Pizza's got to be under 2.
Yeah, a little bit. if not like 202.
Yeah.
So I believe he was playing around with those. When you have an ensemble of like 6 or 7 characters, you kind of have to go over 2 hours.
And then There Will Be Blood is 240, 238 actually.
So I think it's the last time he's made a movie that long.
It doesn't have to be long.
Exactly.
And then sometimes it has sometimes being long is great. It just really depends on the film. And probably the most impressive case of editing has got to be at Magnolia, just because of how many moving parts there are. And he keeps that film emotionally invested, the audience emotionally invested, as well as well-paced without being overwhelming. It's a really epic film. It's his most epic film, the scale of it. It's really, really big. There's a lot of moving parts. There are a lot of scenes. There's a lot of storylines. There are a lot of characters because you have the main ensemble, then you have the side characters and their storylines. So there's a huge, huge cast in Magnolia. Obviously, a film will have like a big amount of extras, but I wouldn't necessarily call them cast. But Magnolia has a lot of speaking parts. Probably, without a doubt, the most speaking parts in any of his films. But the editing in that is extremely well done, and also with Boogie Nights as well. Another huge ensemble. But that Boogie Nights just flows so well. The vibe is great, and he likes to touch the line of extreme darkness. Like Boogie Nights gets pretty dark, Magnolia gets pretty dark, and
then he drops a bunch of frogs on you.
Yeah, then he drops some frogs on you. Then he brings you up for air. The Master, it can get pretty dark as well, and then There'll Be Blood. I wouldn't say it gets dark, but it gets very violent and it gets very grim. But he always brings you up for air at the end of the film. He just has a miraculous way of balancing all of these themes, all of these characters, all of these stories, all of these plots, in this kind of roller coaster of emotions.
I'm finished!
I'm finished!
Another trait that you can't help but notice when you watch Paul Thomas Anderson's films is the passion for filmmaking and the passion for storytelling in his movies. In every single shot, every single film, every scene, the production value, the wardrobe, the acting, the attention to detail, the screenwriting, the dialogue, everything, the lighting. There's so much passion put into every single frame and composition of every project he's ever done, and you can't help but notice it every single time you watch one of his movies.
And he also had a pretty consistent cinematographer, Robert Elswit, for a long time. Robert Elswit shot Boogie Nights, Magnolia, Punch Drunk Love, There Will Be Blood, and then they stopped working together, and then they worked on Inherent Vice together. So for The Master, Elswit had scheduling conflicts, I think with one of the Mission Impossible films, I think MI5. And then, I can't remember the DP.
Mihai Meliamore Jr.
I can never remember his name. But he did a wonderful job with The Master. And then Elswit collaborated with him again on Inherent Vice. But Inherent Vice was kind of the falling out between the two of them, sadly. So Elswit famously won the Oscar for There Will Be Blood. Well-deserved. One of the best shot films of all time. However, as important they both were as collaborators, they had trouble getting along. They were always butting heads. And there are very few details, but I've done plenty of research looking into it. And I saw an interview with Robert Elswit where he said that sometimes he can be stubborn and arrogant, and sometimes I can be stubborn and arrogant. And I think that their personalities clash too much, and probably they both might be two very assertive people, too assertive to continue working together. And then it might have been creative differences, constantly butting heads where it's like, you know what, we can never see eye to eye anymore. And so they stopped working together, unfortunately. And since then, with Phantom Thread and Licorice Pizza, Paul Thomas Anderson, working with his gaffer and the gaffer's team, have basically been filming all of his movies, every shot, themselves. So Phantom Thread and Licorice Pizza were shot by PTA and his gaffer,
Michael Bauman.
And so for Phantom Thread, they didn't do a credit for a cinematographer, but for Licorice Pizza, they shared the credit. And I think it works out because, Paul Thomas Anderson gets to see his vision fully realized. And I'm sure, as brilliant as Robert Elswit is, at the end of the day, PTA is the director, and he has to do what he sees fit. And if it's not working, it's not working. And I'm sure it's probably a better working environment now with him and his new team. But that being said, Phantom Thread is a really special, incredible looking film. It's just shocking to me that PTA is such a master of filmmaking that he's like the main DP of his movies now.
You work with somebody for like 20 years. I mean, you butt heads.
It's a
You have
long
strong
time.
personalities. I'm sure they both, they're both very accomplished filmmakers in their own regards. And I'm sure Ellsworth is a strong personality. I'm sure PTA is a strong personality from what I've heard, especially in his youth. So I can only imagine what it was like on set for the last couple of movies. It's probably stressful, going back and forth. And I mean, there comes a time when work relationships have to end, and it is what it is. It happens in every profession, and sometimes for the best. And clearly, I'm not saying that Paul Thomas Anderson doesn't need Robert Ellsworth, because I think There Will Be Blood is so sensational. I mean, he's such a sensational cinematographer. He really is. But Paul Thomas Anderson did a pretty goddamn fucking good job with Phantom Thread and Licorice Pizza. That's all I'll say. Phantom Thread looks terrific. It really, really does. And so it's not that he doesn't need him. It's just that it's Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yeah. It's amazing that he's so great that you can get the best actor alive to be like, yeah, you don't need a DP. I'll work with you.
Want to do some bests in his career?
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
So what do you think is Paul Thomas Anderson's best movie?
There Will Be Blood.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty easy one. That's a masterpiece, one of the best films literally ever made in the history of cinema, and maybe the best movie this century.
Yeah.
What is his best shot film
Oh, a good one.
in terms of cinematography?
I got to go with There Will Be Blood again, with The Master being second.
I'm going with The Master first. I think it's just a gorgeous film. Such incredible cinematography in that movie.
Sumptuous.
Every shot is just like you could hang in a gallery. Same thing with There Will Be Blood, too. They're both very special shot films, but I think The Master for me especially.
I think that The Master has the benefit of better looking sets, and
Color, yeah.
more details, whereas There Will Be Blood it's a lot in the desert, so it doesn't pop as much. But I do think that the camera work is much more impressive.
But also, I think that Daniel Day-Lewis being on screen helps so much to the cinematography.
Yeah, I mean, just
when you
look-
have a real person from 1912. you
Yeah,
know?
when you have that real character playing himself in a
When
movie.
you went in a time machine and took some guy from the 19-teens and put him in a movie today, like it helps when you can do that. Who's the best character in a Paul Thomas Anderson movie?
I'm gonna sound repetitive. It's Daniel Plainview.
You know,
You should ask me who I think the second best are.
who's the top two characters in?
I would say so. Daniel Plainview.
Yeah, Daniel Plainview for sure, number one.
And then Dirk Diggler, baby.
Dirk Diggler's
Dirk
great.
Diggler.
That's a really good answer.
Yeah, Dirk Diggler's awesome.
I think Freddy from The Master.
I'm a star. I'm a star. I'm a big shining star.
I just want you to know that I'm going to be a star. I'm going to be the biggest star there is. Yeah, that's right. He looks in the mirror. He's like, yeah, that's right. Dirk Diggler's great. So good answer. All right. Best music in terms of composition, score, or soundtrack? Like, what do you got for best music in his movies?
I would say There Will Be Blood for best composed music, and then I would say Licorice Pizza for best soundtrack.
I'm going Boogie Nights for soundtrack. I'm going Boogie Nights for soundtrack.
He put Jet in Licorice Pizza. I gotta go with Jet.
And then
You got Paul McCartney in there. I gotta go with
and then
Licorice Pizza.
music. I'm going Phantom Thread for music.
Oh, that's a great
I
score.
adore
Yeah.
that music.
It's a great
House
score.
of Woodcock. It's like the best song ever.
It's my
made.
favorite to listen to. I'll say that.
It's really
It's
incredible.
my favorite to listen to.
What is Paul Thomas Anderson's best directed movie, just from a directing standpoint?
Oh, it's There Will Be Blood. It's the best directed movie he's ever done. It's one of the best directed movies ever in history of all time that's ever been done.
Yeah, I agree.
All time.
I concur.
Full stop.
I concur.
Next question.
What's his
Oh,
best?
Again, if you want me to go with the second
What's
best
the
again.
second? What are the top two directed movies in his career?
His second best directed movie is Boogie Nights. Boogie Nights.
I'm going The Master for second best for me. What are his two best screenplays?
Again, There Will Be Blood and Boogie Nights.
I will go There Will Be Blood. I think I'm going to go with The Master again. I think it's just a special movie. It's an
For
incredible
screenplay,
It's
yeah.
an incredible script.
Yeah,
It really
it's a
is.
great
The
screenplay.
dialogue is
Yeah.
sensational.
Everything Phillip Seymour Hoffman says. is great.
Everything he
It's
says,
magic, yeah.
Lancaster Dodd, everything he says, so good, so well written. Now, in your entire so obviously There Will Be Blood's your most watched. What's your second most watched? a PTA movie.
Interesting question. I would say my second most watched is probably Magnolia. I watched it a lot when I was younger, like a lot.
Like, how much is a lot?
I've seen that maybe a dozen times.
Oh, all right. My second most watched PTA, it's probably between The Master and probably The Master and Phantom Thread. I think those are my. Obviously, There Will Be Blood's number one, but I think those two are my most watched after There Will Be Blood. I've seen Phantom Thread, I think, 5 times.
Yeah, I've seen it every year since its release.
I've seen The Master around 5 times too. I watched The Master like 3 times in 1 year, like the year it came out on VOD. I was like, this movie's so good. All right, that's all I got for questions. Unless you got any more that you want to ask.
Who is Osborne Cox? What's the best title? What's his best title?
Oh, best title. That's a good question. I think Boogie Nights is such a great title. The thing with Licorice Pizza, I was so confused by the title, and I still am, but I think it's a great title.
It's a reference to I think a radio station in the 70s, something like that, or something famous in the 70s.
I think Boogie Nights is his best title.
Phantom Thread. I think Phantom Thread's a great title. He's awesome with titles.
He is. He's like, if you needed someone to like come up with a band name, he's the guy.
He'd be great at band names.
I'm sure he's come up with band names, or like album names. Like he's podcast names. He probably come up with great podcast names.
All right, what's your favorite shot in a PTA movie?
That's tough, man. I mean,
Gotta pick one, man.
Gotta pick one off the top of my head. Boogie Nights opening.
Boogie Nights opening is a great pick. I gotta go. You know what? I might go with. There's a shot I really like in Phantom Thread when they're on their honeymoon, and he framed it with Reynolds in the bottom left corner of the frame, and then there's just a mountain in the background. But the way they frame the mountain is it just barely is just barely off of the edges of the frame, and it's just really incredible. The camera doesn't even move. It's just like I saw that. I remember seeing that shot in the theaters, and my jaw dropped. I was like, "Holy fuck!"
That shot is so good, it looks fake.
That's
how good it is.
It's that good that it looks fake.
It's like, wait, is that a green screen? Like, it can't be that real.
But it's real.
It can't be that good.
It's real as
because
fuck.
they're walking up the mountain.
I'm as real as a donut.
As real as a donut, motherfucker. Nah, it's dumber than that.
But that shot,
Dex.
I mean, that shot's fucking unbelievable. It's really
That's a good pick.
It's insane.
It's a jaw-dropping shot. I remember I watched it again the other night, and I watched that shot. I'm like, how is that real? Like, what the fuck? How did they do that?
But the framing of it, like everybody else would have framed it so that the mountain was like on the horizon line, right? But he framed it so that the mountain filled the entire frame.
He also put them at the bottom of the mountain.
Yeah. But it's just really incredible.
Yeah, that's an incredible shot.
What's your favorite character outfit in a PTA movie?
Character outfits? Huh.
I can go first if you want.
Yeah, go first.
I love Dirk Diggler's jean outfit in one of his pornos when he played the secret agent.
Yeah, he's doing the punches in the air.
So
the denim
funny.
on denim.
The denim on denim. With the vest, it's great.
I mean, Barry has a great outfit with the blue suit because what's so interesting about the blue suit is it's constant. Blue's a constant in that film, obviously relating to like the space that Barry shouldn't be in, the blueness, and red leads him to like the color palettes of that movie and the motifs. They mean so much depending on the ties he's wearing.
Red tie.
What color tie? If he's wearing a red tie, it's a reflection of his mood and positivity with passion. He's in love. He's excited. Or he wears a yellow tie, or he's wearing a greenish tie, and he's in different types of mood. He's stressed out, or he's got anxiety.
They're like mood rings.
So I think the suit with Barry, it means so much to the character and with the storytelling for him that I think it's really interesting. But also,
you know what? Actually, my favorite outfit might be from Phantom Thread when she makes him dinner and he's pissed about it, and so he goes. He goes upstairs to take a bath, even though she's in a dress. She's already prepared dinner. He's so fucking pissed, and so he goes upstairs to take a bath, and then he comes down. So he's wearing his pajamas.
Yes.
And then he put a blazer over the pajamas.
And a vest.
And a vest.
So he's got a blazer and a dinner vest over pajamas.
Striped pajamas underneath them, just to be like a fuck you to her.
Yeah, just to
it's
be an asshole.
It's the fucking most ridiculous outfit I've ever seen, but it's so fun. Every time I see that scene, I fucking cackle when he comes out in that outfit.
It's incredible.
That's a great outfit.
Daniel Plainview's cardigan in the third act of There Will Be Blood.
That's a great cardigan.
Because it's a long... He's wearing that for like 25 minutes.
Yeah.
But it's an iconic like look for the character. Like when you think of Daniel Plainview, you think of him like obviously his outfits when he's in the field. I mean, not in the desert. But like then
boots,
the cardigan. The cardigan in the third act is like like in my head all the time whenever I think of Daniel Plainview. It's like a great look for the character.
Yeah, that's a great... Like, because he often wears the suit he wears the suit so much that, you know, it's the only other kind of outfit that he wears is that cardigan. So it really sticks out.
Magnolia... Frank's outfit, played by Tom Cruise, with the
Frank T.J. Mackey's outfit's great.
He's got like a blue button-up long sleeve. Then he's got a leather vest on.
The leather vest,
and then the ninja hair, the ninja ponytail hair. That's a great character look.
I wanted to quote it, but I was like, no, I can't quote that.
Maybe don't quote.
Yeah, I'm not gonna
Maybe
quote
don't
it.
quote it.
But also, the dresses in Phantom Thread are amazing.
And the suits.
My favorite dress is probably, man, it's hard to pick one dress. I like the pink dress with the white lace on it that they did for the poster when they did the
beautiful.
photo shoot. I think that's a really wonderful dress. Also, the emerald green dress is really stunning. It's a stunning green.
Boogie Nights, Jack dresses really well. I like his outfits as well. In that.
Oh yeah, he's
always
very stylish.
Yeah, he's a stylish guy. Inherent Vice, some great costumes and great outfits for that as well.
The jean jacket in the mutton chops. I mean,
The chops
It's
are
great.
ridiculous. And then I would say the Master is really well dressed. I mean, Lancaster Dodd, he's a very lucrative guy. He's got a lot of money from duping all these people. He dresses really well.
well, yeah, he dresses well, but my favorite is when they're in the desert and he's got like that green sequence button-up short sleeve shirt with the tan with like white linen, and then when they're digging up his previous work, it's a really cool outfit. It's funny, but yeah, costuming's great in his movies, like always, in production design as well. He understands that when the elements are there, and I have great actors. I mean, most of the job's done. It's pretty much already done. You just got to shoot it.
When you have Daniel Day-Lewis, it makes life easy. And Joaquin Phoenix and Philip Seymour Hoffman. It does make life easy, I'm sure. And you know, it's cool because I've seen some documentary. There's a documentary about the making of Magnolia. And then there's a documentary about the making of... Which one is it? I think it's... Yeah, Magnolia.
Like a long one.
Yeah, there's a documentary about the making of it. And you get to really see how close he and Philip Seymour Hoffman were.
He's I think Hoffman's son's godfather. His godfather.
Cooper Hoffman.
Cooper Hoffman. He's his godfather.
And then it's a really tragic thing because they were great friends for such a long time and artistic, creative partners in so many ways, and they helped make each other's careers. And then obviously Hoffman passes away, and then
he was only 42.
I know, it's sad, man. In West Village in New York when he passed away. And then it's so special, I'm sure, for him to put his son in a movie with Licorice Pizza, Cooper Hoffman, not an actor, but to put him in a feature-length film and make him the lead of a Paul Thomas Anderson movie.
Yeah.
That must have been really important to Paul Thomas Anderson. I know a lot of people think, like, why would you do that? It's like kind of nepo, or it's weird, or you're just doing it because of who his last name is. But I mean, you don't know the relationship between the two of them. And
He did great.
I'm sure it meant so much to PTA and to Cooper Hoffman as well, and his family to have that experience and act in that movie.
So that scene in The Master where when Freddy returns and Lancaster is so happy, like they start hugging in the yard, and then they eventually start wrestling in the grass.
The first time he returns.
Yeah, the first time he returns. Like they're so happy, they start like pulling each other and pushing each other. Then they're literally wrestling on the grass. Paul Thomas Anderson said he pulled that from a real experience between him and Philip Seymour Hoffman, where they went to meet at a bar in the Valley, and Paul Thomas Anderson went there. He was so elated. He said, because he's been dating this new girl, and he was like, I'm in love. And what started out as a hug was they just wouldn't let go, and they ended up wrestling on the floor of the bar, and were breaking like tables and glasses, and they got kicked out, and they had to pay for everything. But like that really, he pulled that from what they really did.
Shows a little more than love in
little
the
more
blood
than love.
system, in the bloodstream.
There's a story where I think it was Fiona Apple, she said, where she was hanging out with PTA and Tarantino, and she said that hanging out with them made me want to quit using cocaine. Because what they ended up doing was they put a movie marathon of their movies on and kept talking about how awesome their movies were, and she said she wanted to like kill herself.
So Fiona Apple, musician, obviously, if you don't know, used to date PTA, and they actually made 4 or 5 music videos together. And PTA has made so many great music videos. He made a bunch for Fiona Apple. He's made a bunch for Radiohead, as well as some solo ones for Tom York. And then Chaim, he's made several.
Like all of them.
He's made a bunch. He made like their entire album in the 2000, like when they dropped their album, like 2017.
Their second album, I think.
I don't know if it
or
was
their first. I think it was their second album.
Yeah, it wasn't their first. It was like 2017. They dropped an album, and he made like 6 music videos for them.
Well, he's friends with their family. So his teacher, Paul Thomas Anderson's elementary school art teacher is the mother of the Haim sisters.
Oh.
And so he based Licorice Pizza is loosely based on him having a crush on her. So when he was in high school, he had a crush on this art teacher who was the Haim's mom.
I had no idea.
So
that's
why
really interesting.
that's why he linked up with the Haim band. It made so many music videos for
So
them.
he's been trying to just mac on the mom.
Yeah, it's
still,
all to get to the mom.
Still to get to the mom.
No.
Sorry, Maya Rudolph. I'm just kidding.
And so that's why he knows the Haim sisters. That's why he made music videos with them. Because also because they make great music.
Yeah, they're really talented.
And then that's why he cast Alana Haim in Licorice Pizza as the co-lead, and the entire real family plays her family.
And she's a great actress.
But it was her first time acting though.
Yeah,
in a lead. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. But the thing with a lot of musicians, that's why with Lady Gaga or The Star Is Born, a lot of these musicians, they've acted
They're
plenty.
performers.
They're performers.
Yeah.
They go on stage in front of tens of thousands of people. They've made music videos before, acting in music videos a lot of times. So it's not like a lot of these musicians turn actors have no experience. That's why I think it oftentimes works out really well, especially with the kind of raw talent of someone like Alana Haim going with Cooper Hoffman in Licorice Pizza. It just works so well that they're not, you can tell they're not highly trained classical actors, but it works so well.
Yeah, it seems
feel
like
real.
I think he wrote the characters based on their real personalities, is my guess. Because I've seen lots of Alana Haim interviews, and she seems very much like Alana in the film. And I mean, she's named after her. So I think that he, with that film, based the characters off these people. But also he did that with Phillip Seymour Hoffman in Magnolia. He said that Phil's character in Magnolia is Phillip Seymour Hoffman in real life. And he just said his direction for him was just do what you would do and just be you.
That's why I call him Phil Parma.
Yeah,
That's his name.
exactly.
Also a play on Big Pharma or Pharma, I think, because he plays a nurse.
Oh, definitely. It's got to be.
But Phil Parma is his name.
Phil Parma.
Phil Parmesan.
Parmesan.
It's a funny name.
I want some Parmesan.
Phil Parma. Paul Thomas Anderson is hands down not only just one of the best American filmmakers alive and of all time, but he's an auteur. You know, an auteur is a very special kind of filmmaker. What does it mean to be an auteur? Basically, the filmmaker's creativity and control really allows them to visualize a script and put their own personal stamp on it to supersede the storytelling in a lot of ways, and that style is unique to that filmmaker. So when you're watching an auteur's filmmaker's movie, when you're watching an auteur's movie, you know it's their movie. When you see a Wes Anderson movie, you know it's a Wes Anderson movie. When you see a Tarantino movie, you know it's a Tarantino movie. Their style is unique. No one else can copy it. No one else can do it. They can try. A lot of people try to emulate auteurs, but Paul Thomas Anderson is one of the great American auteurs in cinema.
Yeah, it's like when you watch his movie, or when you watch a PTA movie, you know it's him. It's like when you watch a Wes Anderson movie, you know it's Wes Anderson.
It's like you didn't even listen to anything I just said.
It's just like,
It's like word for word what I just said.
I was reading my notes. I'm sorry.
I literally said it's like when you watch a Wes Anderson movie, you know it's a Wes Anderson movie. When you watch a Quentin Tarantino movie, you know it's a Tarantino.
Oh my God, sorry.
Legit.
I was reading
my
my
notes. Eye
notes.
contact with me while I was saying it too.
0 words came in. I was sorry. I was reading my notes and I just couldn't care less about what you're saying.
Imagine if you started off with like, and not to mention Paul Thomas Anderson is
an
also
auteur.
is an auteur. What is an auteur?
Oh my God, it's so funny. And he's worked with some of the best actors alive. I mean, Daniel Day-Lewis, Phil Seymour Hoffman, Joaquin Phoenix, Amy Adams, so many of
Julianne Moore,
just so many of the greatest working actors. And it's difficult to get Daniel Day-Lewis to make one movie, but he got him to make 2 movies. I mean, Scorsese barely got him to make 2 movies. Scorsese is the only other director he's made 2 movies with.
I can neither confirm or deny that.
He is. It's a fact. That's facts. Verifiable.
Someone verify.
I'm
us.
98% sure.
See, you're not sure.
No, I'm 99.9% sure. PTA, because he only made one film with Spielberg.
He made no. Paul Thomas Anderson made 2 Michael Bay movies.
Well, Michael Bay is an auteur too.
He is. I mean,
When you look at a Michael Bay movie, you know it's a Michael Bay movie.
I mean, technically, Zack Snyder's an auteur.
Yeah. Did you call him Snack Snyder?
I know I said Zack.
But it's just he's got to be a great director for actors to get actors like this to keep working with him. In a way, he is an actor's director, but it's a difficult thing to get like someone like Daniel Day-Lewis to say yes twice. It's hard enough to get him to say yes once, But because someone like Daniel Day, he invests his entire life into the project before they even start the project. With Phantom Thread doing a year of couture dressmaking assistant work, it's just crazy. So he must be just a wonderful collaborator. And just his first film, you got John C. Reilly, Philip Baker Hall, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Samuel L. Jackson in his first movie.
John C. Reilly.
Did I say John C. Reilly? I thought I did. Philip Baker Hall, Gwyneth Paltrow, Sam Jackson. I said John C. Reilly. You weren't listening.
I was listening. That's why I said you didn't say John C. Reilly.
Then who did I say?
You said
Philip Baker Hall, Sam Jackson, Gwyneth Paltrow, and
some guy.
if you haven't seen Hard 8, it's really good. I highly recommend checking it out. It's a really cool movie. But maybe we could start going through his filmography.
Well, what we should probably do first is head to the intermission.
Absolutely.
And then we'll go movie to movie.
I like what you're throwing down, man.
But actually, I have another fun fact real
let's hear
quick
it.
to bring up. So when screenwriters write their movies, they have, some have different quirks and tweaks. Some people write by hand and then translate that into like screenwriting format, like Final Draft, which is a very common software to be used. Now, Paul Thomas Anderson, the way he writes his screenplays is in Microsoft Word. And he has an assistant that he hires to transfer his scripts into proper screenplay software for dispersal to crew during production and receives an on-screen credit in the finished film.
That's great.
So he writes his scripts in Microsoft Word.
That sounds like something I would do. Just a reluctance to use the next good thing in technology.
Well, I mean, it's like, I feel like for a lot of people, whatever it is, writing or anything, you like to still do it the way you started doing it. Sure. There's something to that nostalgia that gets you in the right rhythm, the right headspace of whatever craft you're doing. So I totally get that. Now, how about we get into our intermission?
Let's do it, man.
And then we'll go a little more about PTA and then movie by movie by movie.
Let's do it.
Should be a lot of fun. Now, before we continue, though, the best way to support Raiders of the Lost podcast is to share us with your friends and family members who love movies, who love TV. Now, another great way to support our show is to leave a 5-star rating and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We love to read the reviews out that are written on Apple. I'll do that in a little bit. But these ratings really help us get seen by new people. So thank you to everyone who's left us reviews. We're at like 2,300 ratings on Spotify, which is huge. That's big time. We're only at like 1,800 on Apple. So we really want to get those numbers up. So if you're on Apple right now, if you're listening. And finally, the best other great way to support our show is to become a patron at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost Podcast. Patreon is a subscription-based form of support. 5 different tiers of membership: $2, $5, $10, $25, and $100. Every single tier gets access to 2 weekly bonus episodes of the show. We have over 200 that we've done that you can listen to instantly. And you can also listen on Spotify with our private Patreon Spotify playlist. If you link your Patreon to Spotify, it's called Raiders of the Lost Patreon. It's pretty great. Every tier has awesome perks, including video messages. The $10 tier gets you access to our Discord. We have watch parties, chat with you all the time on there. We have Fantasy League. It's pretty cool. As well as $25, you get a custom episode. You pick a topic, and we'll do it for you. $100 has so many perks, I can't name them off. One of them includes coming on the show for a fun guest segment, though.
It's great.
Thank you for being patrons if you are one. If you haven't, go ahead and sign up at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost Podcast.
This episode, of course, is sponsored by our friends at movieposters.com, the #1 place to get your posters online today. Be sure to use our promo code Raiders10 to get 10% off your order right now. Movieposters.com has a huge selection of pretty much every movie and TV show imaginable in their poster library, as well as all sorts of sizes, framing, and even backlighting for your poster needs. They are high-quality posters, very affordable. We have dozens of these posters all over our home and all over our set. We love them. They're fantastic quality, and they look amazing. So, for all of your poster needs, whether you need one for yourself or you want to get the movie lover in your life a gift, definitely head on over to movieposters.com and use our coupon code Raiders10 to get 10% off your order right now and let them know we sent you. All right, you ready?
I'm ready. Let's get into our intermission and begin with the movie quote competition.
Let's do it.
I pay you to get on first, not to get thrown out at second.
I'm guessing it's a baseball movie. I pay you to get Moneyball?
Yes.
Nice. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Here's my quote. The past is just a story we tell ourselves.
I know this. Fucking know this.
The past is just a story we tell ourselves.
Her.
Correct.
Can't stump me on that one. It's a great line. It's a great screenplay. Best original screenplay.
Oscar winner.
Guess this movie release year. Synecdoche, New York.
Synecdoche, New York, 2010.
2008. Almost, man. Almost.
I also did a Phillip Seymour Hoffman movie, Charlie Wilson's War.
2010.
2007. Co-starring Tom Hanks. They're great together.
Movie pop quiz time.
Let's hear it, man.
What disaster movie is Phillip Seymour Hoffman in?
Disaster movie? Fuck. Disaster movie. Oh my god. Come on. What's he in? What was his paycheck? What was his paycheck movie?
I wouldn't call it that.
Oh no, it's good.
No, I wouldn't call it like a paycheck movie for him. I mean, he got paid, but like it's not like a.
I know.
It's not like
Twister.
Yeah, he's got a small role in that.
Twister.
He's just one of like the crew guys.
All right, Amy Adams had a guest role in both The Office and what other huge comedy series?
No, what? Amy Adams in a TV series. What's the one with Tina Fey and Alec Baldwin? Is it that?
30 Rock?
30 Rock?
No. She might. No, I don't know. No. It was That 70s Show.
Amy Adams is in That 70s Show?
Yeah, she guest spotted in
How many episodes? In an episode?
Yeah.
Do you remember like what character she plays or what
No
the
idea.
episode is?
No, it's just on IMDb.
Thanks for the info, man. Just kidding.
I didn't watch the episode.
All right.
Don't be salty because you got it wrong.
I did get it wrong. What do we got for haters this week, man? We got any Raider haters? Any unsubscribes?
We got some good ones.
I'm going to pull up a review while you
do
do
that. So,
that.
we just did an episode on the Captain America trilogy, and we kept calling James Rhodes Brody.
Seen Point Break too many times. It's Rhodey.
So, Stace the Ace wrote, James Rhodes, Rhodey, not Brody, unsubscribed. And then Johnny Ray wrote, I need to give you an unsubscribe. You didn't even mention how Cap fights the one and only UFC champ George St. Pierre. Unsubscribe. Stop disrespecting Canada. This is like the Hudson's Bay all over again.
The Hudson's Bay.
Sorry, I totally. When we watched it again, I was like, I feel like that guy's a famous fighter or something. But yeah, that's George St. Pierre. He fights on the boat.
Thanks, guys.
Andrew,
isn't he from that movie District 14? That French movie?
No, that's the parkour guy. George St. Pierre's a UFC fighter.
Yeah. I got you.
Get out of here, man.
You get out of here.
In our Cap trilogy, Andrew Recruiter wrote, James claims to have watched all the Harry Potter movies last week, but they aren't all logged on Letterboxd. Unsubscribe.
Sometimes I forget.
Sure.
I forgot to put the Deathly Hallows ones in there.
So you watched them all?
I did. Forgot to get the Deathly Hallows though.
Well, it's not legit until you put it on Letterboxd, bro.
Sometimes I forget, man. Sometimes I forget.
How do you forget to press a few buttons on your phone?
Because
You're
sometimes
a disappointment.
will watch a movie, then I'm like, all right, I think I'll go to bed now, and then I go to bed.
Fair enough.
Sometimes it's what I do
Fair
with
enough.
my life.
Colin in our Bear episode wrote, I'm going to win the poster giveaway, or I unsubscribe. Now I hope you win it.
Good luck.
Next up, Joe Gem wrote, the doll is called Billy. Jigsaw is John Kramer. Unsubscribe.
Sorry, I know. When we were doing that bit about the Jigsaw, the AMC spoof of Nicole Kidman's ad, I was like, someone's gonna call us out for saying he's Jigsaw.
I've always looked at the doll as Jigsaw.
It's Jigsaw's voice.
It's the representation of Jigsaw.
Yeah, I mean, kind of. Like when you Google Jigsaw, it's like him. It's the doll.
Yeah. True Blue Andrew wrote, Brody, his name is Rhodey. Unsubscribed. And I replied, we are dumb.
Sorry, I've just seen Point Break way more times
and then
than Civil War.
And then Benjamin Cook wrote, you come in here, you do an MCU episode, you get War Machine's name right. It's Christina, a.k.a. Rhodey. And I wrote, are you deaf or are you stupid? Sick reference, bro. Your references are out of control. I love it. It's so funny.
That's funny, man.
I read that this morning and I was cackling.
That's a great one because you reference that all the time. That's the nice guys, right? No,
Yeah,
the other guys.
the other guys.
All right, let me pull up a 5-star review. I can't access them all. I can only access the last like 7.
Let me see if I can.
It's kind of weird. It's cut off at July 27th.
Is your Wi-Fi up?
Data right now. I don't rock Wi-Fi when we record because I don't want to interrupt the service from my computer. But anyways, I have one right here from Matt Mello. Awesome podcast.
Nice.
Love the podcast. James and Anthony's knowledge and love for movies really shows throughout the episodes. I always look forward to new episodes to get me through the day. Matt, so happy to hear that you're tuning into us every day, I hope. Love you, man. Thanks for the review.
That's awesome. Thanks,
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. My voice didn't crack.
Pal.
I said thanks, pal.
Thank you, pal. Thank you, pal. That was excellent. Excellent review.
Everyone's bass is going way too loud right now. Stop that.
I've never done that before.
Makes your voice sound.
No, you're messing up their speakers in their car, man. They're trying to drive to work and it just sounds so loud. I'm being serious. Stop doing it. Anthony, stop it.
I haven't been doing it.
Anthony, stop it.
All right, what's your streaming recommendation?
Phantom Thread on Netflix. I mean, might as
It's on
well
Netflix.
Yeah, might as well watch a PTA movie. There's a few on streaming platforms right now. That one's on Netflix.
I recommend the Ocean's Trilogy. It's on Max.
Bow, bow, bow.
I watched them all the other day, and man, what a great trilogy. It's a lot of fun. It is the vibes.
It's the vibes.
The vibes are nice with Oceans.
The oceans are fun. Now let's get back into Paul Thomas Anderson's director spotlight on Raiders of the Lost podcast. Now, Anderson is one of Hollywood's quote-unquote most paranoid filmmakers, according to New York Magazine. It's become a part of Hollywood lore that Anderson, at least while represented by UTA, would never set foot in his own talent agency, and when he did contact his agents by phone, he would immediately demand that he call him back on his own cell phone without any nosy assistant listening in. Anderson also says he does not trust email when sending out his screenplays, according to Leslie Manville. I wouldn't trust that either. Now, Leslie Manville plays Cyril in Phantom Thread.
Cyril.
Oscar nominee for that role. John C. Reilly said in an interview that Anderson prefers to be a Wizard of Oz-like figure hiding behind the curtain of his work.
He's also had very bad experiences. Hard 8, it was actually, so it was his first feature film, and the company that produced it took it from him and re-edited it.
Even changed the name.
Changed the name.
It's supposed to be Sydney.
The original film was called Sydney, and then they changed it to Hard 8, and they also re-edited it, and he was horrified. I mean, it's still a good film, but it's not what he wanted to put out there. And so after that, he was extremely paranoid about Boogie Nights. And so when he found a production company willing to back him, he demanded, but he didn't demand, but he said, if we make this, it has to be this length. It has to be everything that's on this page, these pages, it has to be 3 hours. I'm not cutting anything out. And they were like, don't worry, like it's gonna be fine. Like, it's not always like that with production companies. So he had a terrible experience on his first film. I think shooting it was fine, but the post-production and then eventual release of Hard 8 was really hard on him as a filmmaker.
Well, speaking of Hard 8, so we've talked about the Dirk Diggler story, which he made as his 30-minute mockumentary when he was 17 years old back in 1988.
He was inspired by Rob Reiner's film, the great rock mockumentary.
Oh, Spinal Tap?
Spinal Tap. This is Spinal Tap. That's what inspired it.
And then he made Coffee and Cigarettes in 1993, that 20-minute short film we talked about starring Phillip Rager Hall that we mentioned earlier, which ended up being inspiration for Hard 8, which he made in 1996. Hard 8 has an IMDb rating of 7.1, Rotten Tomatoes 82%, critic score 83%, audience score. The film follows a veteran gambler, Sidney, played by Phillip Rager Hall, in Las Vegas, who takes a down on his luck gambler named John, played by John C. Reilly, under his wing and in his scams to kind of cheat the system. Little does John know, though, Sidney is the man who killed his father. The two form a tight bond, though, and sex worker named Clementine, who Sidney becomes a surrogate father for as well, form this kind of surrogate family, which is a common theme in a lot of Paul Thomas Anderson movies. We have these loners, we have these outsiders, a lot of them creating and finding families that act as surrogate families for themselves. Now, as hard as Sidney tries in the film, he can't escape who he truly is, though.
And John C. Reilly plays the other co-lead. He plays John. And so Sidney, he has this system of gaming casinos. He's got this really interesting method of basically ripping them off small bit by small bit. And then he profits a lot based on that. And he's also an excellent gambler and bettor. And so he takes John under his wing out of nowhere. He basically picks him up in a diner, reminiscent of that short film. And at first, John is like, who is this old guy talking to me? Like, he just offered to take me to Vegas? Like, why? Because he's nobody. John's just a guy who was sitting outside of the diner. And then Sidney just, like, comes up to him, talks to him, buys him breakfast, and then is like, hey, I'll drive you to Vegas with me. And it's funny because they get in the car, and Riley's like, I'm going to sit in the back seat. He's like, I don't want to do any sex stuff. Is that what it's about? And then after a bit of driving, they chat for a bit. He goes up to the front seat. But Sidney takes him under his wing, teaches him how to game the system, teaches him how to gamble, until several months later, we cut to John's doing very well for himself, living that casino hotel life. They're sharing. They both live in hotel suites, and he's doing really well in Vegas. It's not until we learn that through Sam Jackson's character, Jimmy, he knows that Sidney is actually the one who killed John's father, and so as a way of trying to atone for his sin, Sidney is trying to make this man's son's life better.
Yeah, and the thing with it is, so Jimmy's trying to blackmail him basically for money, and I'll tell him basically if you don't pay me, and that doesn't work out so well for Jimmy. But we obviously don't want to spoil this movie because I'm sure a lot of you haven't seen it, but it's not that Sidney feels guilt, I would say. It's more like it's hard to describe.
Why else would he take him in?
But he doesn't show guilt in this movie, really. He doesn't like
with his actions. He's not like crying. There's different ways of showing guilt. It doesn't always have to be crying and having emotional
I didn't say
scenes.
anything about crying, man.
But you can still show it through his actions of taking this young guy under his wing and literally teaching him the trade.
Yes, but also I feel like he doesn't feel guilt like a normal person would, Sidney. He's kind of this very closed-off guy.
Well, he's a killer.
He's a killer. He's got a system. And that's what I mean. He can't escape who he truly is by the end of the film. And I think one of my favorite shots in that entire movie is one of the final shots is him covering the blood stain on his sleeve.
Yeah,
it's one of the best shots in his early filmography, really. And it means so much. But Sidney, he's this interesting guy because he's got a system. He's such a professional. And Philip Baker Hall is really terrific in this movie. He was a huge guy in the 90s. I mean, he was doing this. Talented Mr. Ripley's got a great small role in too. But it's something about this guy on camera. He's just magnetic. The voice is incredible. He could have been like a radio personality in the 1950s.
He does have a voice for radio.
He's got a radio voice. It works so well to him and his advantage for acting. And he plays this very stoic, kind of like Les Samurai character. Have you ever seen Les Samurai? It reminds me of Hard Eight big time. This stoic, well-dressed guy who's kind of up to no good but has a system. He's a professional, but some things start to go wrong that disrupt his system, and he has to do something about it to get order back in his life, basically.
And Riley's great, and then Gwyneth Paltrow is really great in it as well. Her role is pretty surprising and has a lot to do with John's character. They end up having a relationship, but in that it complicates things based on her profession. And it's a really tight crime movie. It's pretty unknown. I never see people talking about it at all. I really enjoy the film. I think it's his simplest film, but in a lot of ways it's strong for that. And there's some great casino sequences. Phillip Seymour Hoffman is the craps player we mentioned earlier. He's playing craps. He's a loudmouth. He's egging on Philip Baker Hall's character.
He's
Sidney.
shooting for Hard Eight, right?
Yeah.
And Jimmy's shooting
Hard
for
Eight is the
4-4.
the role. Yeah,
4-4 roll.
and so I think that you saw a lot of his style choices. We get a lot of long takes following Sidney around the casino. And then we also see a lot of his players, a lot of his usual suspects of actors, Riley, Philip Seymour Hoffman, and then Philip Baker Hall, obviously. Sam Jackson's really good in it, too.
Yeah.
He's awesome. And ironically, I mean, PTA and Quentin Tarantino became very good friends, but they weren't like friends while they were making their first film. They became friends after each of their first films. Because a friend of theirs, a mutual friend of theirs, were like, you got to meet this guy. He's just like you. You would get along with him. So they started hanging out. And now they're very, very close friends. They've been for many years. And also, they're kind of like cinematic rivals in a way, because There Will Be Blood inspired Tarantino to make Inglourious Bastards as well as he did, because he was really like, oh shit.
Phantom Thread is it Phantom Thread or is There Will Be Blood?
There Will Be Blood.
Gotcha, yeah.
Phantom Thread was like 10 years
2007.
later,
It's like
man. Fuck. What'd you put in that mango tequila drink, man?
more than tequila. I guess I was hanging out with Tarantino and Paul Thomas Anderson.
But so Tarantino, and this is an interview with him, he said that he was working on Inglourious for a couple of years, the idea of it, and then he saw There Will Be Blood, and he was so impressed with it. He's like, I got to top PTA somehow. I got to top Paul.
Or I gotta match him somehow
Yeah.
because he made a masterpiece. I gotta
Exactly,
make a
yeah.
masterpiece as well.
Yeah.
Which he
But
did.
Tarantino does say that Boogie Nights is Paul Thomas Anderson's greatest film.
It really is up there. We might as well move into Boogie Nights, which came out in
Let's dance into it.
1997.
Let's groove it. Let's groove into it.
My love. I love the opening of this movie. This movie's so fun. The energy is amazing. 1997 IMDb. It's a 7.9, one of his highest rated movies. Rotten Tomatoes, 94% critic score, 89% audience score. In the San Fernando Valley in 1977, a teenage busboy named Eddie Adams, played by Marky Mark, gets discovered by porn director Jack Horner, played by Burt Reynolds, who transforms him into an adult film sensation, Dirk Diggler. Brought into a supportive circle of friends, including fellow actors Amber Waves, Roller Girl, and Reed Rothschild, Dirk fulfills his ambitions, but a toxic combination of drugs and egotism threatens to take him down. What a second feature. I mean, Hard Eight's a really great first feature, but this for your second film, what a phenomenal movie. It was a hit for New Line Cinema. It made $45 million on a budget of just 15, 3 Oscar nominations, and after the success of Boogie Nights, New Line told Anderson basically, the next movie you make, creative freedom, whatever you want, here's the money, creative control.
That's how he got Magnolia made. 3-hour epic. Boogie Nights is unbelievable. It's so fantastic. It's one of those movies that when you put it on, you're like, oh my God.
You can't turn it off.
There's nothing like it.
Cannot turn it off.
It's got style. It's got comedy. It's got great tone. It's got beautiful cinematography from Elswit. And the cast is just really dynamite. This was Mark Wahlberg's big role. This made him a big name in acting.
Because he did Fear the year before.
He did Fear with Reese Witherspoon, and he had done The Basketball Diaries a couple years before that. But still, he was still just known as like the rapper and Calvin Klein guy. And so this movie, it's a serious role. This is some serious heavy-duty acting he's doing. And he showed that he has the chops. Like, he had the chops. He has the chops to lead a film. He did the villain. He did the sidekick. Now he's doing the lead actor of a big film with a bunch of very, very big names and extremely talented veteran actors as well. And he held his own. He did a wonderful job in this film as Dirk Diggler. And it really was his coming out as a big-time movie star.
To be taken seriously, I bet you could kind of compare the way Jack looks at Eddie for the first time at the club, where he's like, oh my God, there he is. That's the guy everyone's talking about, to like PTA finding him to play Dirk Diggler, basically. Oh, that's the guy. He's perfect for this role. Maybe?
He offered the role of DiCaprio.
Oh.
Leonardo DiCaprio turned down Boogie Nights for The Beach. Or it was either The Beach or The Man in the Iron Mask. I think it was The Beach. And so DiCaprio was his first choice. Obviously, it's DiCaprio.
But I think DiCaprio definitely would have strayed away from a project like this.
No, he wanted to do it.
Then why didn't he do it?
Because he wanted to work with Danny Boyle.
Gotcha. All right, that makes sense.
But he was very interested. He almost did it. He was very close. I think DiCaprio would have been great.
Oh yeah,
DiCaprio would have crushed it.
Would have been sensational.
But Mark Wahlberg is really sensational in it. It's nothing against him. Leo's just the best actor of that generation.
Do you think that Boogie Nights is his funniest movie for PTA?
PTA's funniest movie? I would say Boogie Nights is his favorite. Everything between Wahlberg and Riley is just fucking insanely funny.
It's a very funny movie. It really is.
Like when they're making margaritas and talking about benching, like when they first meet each other
work
at
it
the
out,
party.
yeah.
It's so funny.
The shit that Dirk says for like half of his lines too
Yeah.
is just so funny.
Yeah.
It's such a great character.
I can go again, Frank. Jack, I can just go again.
I'm gonna be a star. I'm gonna be the biggest star there is.
But
Have you heard about the honeybees?
as wild and crazy as the film is, it comes from a deep emotional center, and that's Dirk's rejection from his mother, the mommy issues you mentioned earlier with Paul Thomas Anderson. Maybe that's what his mom was really like. And when he was a boy, when he was a teenager, you can tell that he had a difficult life and that he was a bus boy. He never fit in anywhere, and being rejected by your mother is a difficult thing. She treats him horribly, and nobody believes in him. So you have that driving the character. It's not like he's like some confident, suave guy to open the film. He's a nobody, and he's got nothing.
Yeah, he takes a bus from what he lives like an hour away to get to L.A.
Yeah.
To be a busboy in a club.
Exactly. So I think that what's important for the film to work and for the character to work is for him to start from bottom and to start from such a emotional turmoil that even when he falls into disillusion and selfish behavior in the latter half of the film, you understand where he's coming from, and then it ultimately lets you accept him and then want him to get better because you know how difficult his life was before he got into this journey.
And this movie has so many of the regulars from PTA's movies of, like, obviously John C. Reilly, Julianne Moore, and then also Luis Guzman, who he is essential to this movie working because he's the energy of the opening of the movie. Like, the opening one shot, he's the owner of the club. He is taking the audience on this journey to open this movie and start this journey. So he's a great collaborator. The PTA is also in Punch Drunk Love as well. But I think he's such an important member for just the first 5 minutes of this movie, setting the tone, getting the audience excited to witness what we're about to see. I think he's so essential to this movie.
And also we get William H. Macy, who is in Magnolia, his following film.
Don Cheadle's in this as well.
Don
Is he in
Cheadle's
any other
great.
PTA movies? I don't know.
Don Cheadle's not in any other PTA movies. Yeah. But William H. Macy's in 2 of them.
Heather Graham is awesome in this movie, too. She plays Roller Girl.
Ironically, Burt Reynolds hated the film, and he didn't watch it.
He didn't.
He didn't watch it, even though he was nominated for an Oscar for his role.
Wow. I
He
wonder
hated
why.
he hated the film, and he hated working with Paul Thomas Anderson.
Did it say why?
That's all I could gather from my research. He just didn't like it. He didn't like working with him. He didn't like his process, and he ended up never watching the movie.
That's like Gene Hackman with Wes Anderson. And
Yeah, Gene
Royal
Hackman
Tenenbaums,
hated Wes Anderson.
Tenenbaums.
He did not like working with Wes Anderson at all.
That's interesting as hell. But I guess, I mean, you sign your contract, you gotta do your job.
I mean, yeah, he's an old timer. Maybe because PTA was only 26. Maybe because you're so young, he didn't want to be bossed around by a kid. Maybe you get in an argument, you gotta listen to. You have to say yes to the 26-year-old, even though you're 55-year-old movie star.
You're Burt fucking
You're a
Reynolds.
legend, and yet you still gotta give in to the young guy. So maybe there was some problem with that. That would be my guess. But Burt Reynolds did not like the film.
And when I think about Boogie Nights and when you watch it, it reminds me of Casino with Scorsese because it's one of those movies. It's like there are so many scenes, there's so many sequences. It's almost one of those situations like, how did you make this movie? How did you film it?
Same thing with Altman too.
There's a
what his
lot
movies
going
are
on
like.
in this movie. It's a great film, great drama. I mean, it gets so dark later on when Dirk is becoming so egotistical and self-centered and starts to take control of everything and thinks he's like the king of the world and gets
I love
into drugs.
The montage of his different awards acceptances. Like the first time he's so grateful and gives this huge speech, and then the 5th time he's like, thanks. He walks away with sunglasses on. So funny.
But then getting mixed up with the drugs and Alfred
But
Molina's
before that,
character.
becoming a musician
Yes.
and thinking that he could sell records
But
as a singer.
That's based off the guy John Holmes. He really put out a record.
Really?
He had a song in a Transformers episode.
Oh my God, no
Like
way.
the Transformers cartoon, there's an episode of a song of his that plays.
It's like, you will want me.
Something like that.
Something
But it's like
in
that
this-
classic,
yeah.
like glamour rock from
Yeah.
the 80s, 70s glamour rock.
But the thing is,
Poison.
Anderson shoots it so brilliantly because Wahlberg can't sing. And yet he's trying. Like, Dirk thinks he can sing. And his singing is so terrible. And you're just watching him belt out these songs, and you're like, oh my God, he's so bad. Like, last time I watched it, last month, I was laughing hysterically because Dirk is so terrible on the microphone.
Yeah, but it's a really interesting concept in the movie because it's about pornography. It's about the porn industry, which is such a taboo subject for so many people. I mean, probably worse now to make a movie about it versus back here in 1997. It was a little more acceptable to make a film about it, but I feel like you couldn't do a movie about porn today, even though it's such a widely used thing in the world, ironically. But
funny.
it's like something enticing about watching a movie about the industry, especially back in this era, is really fascinating.
Yeah, it's an interesting place to set the film. And also we get to see the transformation from film to videotape.
Yeah.
Which is a major theme in the film, moving from film to video. And not video, but videotape. It's just I like the idea of this world it's like Hollywood. It's just smaller. There are sets, there are production teams, there's a boom mic operator, there's a cinematographer. It's a crew. It's a movie crew, but it's just the movies that don't play in theaters anymore. It's an interesting world to set the movie in, and I think he did a great job of showing a lot while still keeping it rated R. He showed some stuff, but also some of the most powerful sex scenes are like you're not even seeing anything. Like the Julianne Moore Wahlberg one, his first scene is a great sex scene, but you only see them from shoulders up. You know what I mean? But it's the movements and the camera lingering and not cutting. That's the strength of the scene. That's what really works. But also, him being so well endowed, you hear about it in the first act of the film. It's being built up, and then when he finally gets his pants taken off in the first scene, what Paul Thomas Anderson does is, you know what? I'm not going to show it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to show everyone's reactions to it. So we cut to Burt Reynolds, like even he's reacting to it. We cut to the cameraman. He's so shocked by it, but he moves away from the lens to get a better look just in his normal eyesight. Phillip Seymour Hoffman's character is shaking because he's so shocked and turned on by it. And then everyone else watching, even the other actors, they're just like mesmerized by it. So it's a great moment to show first the build up, and then rather than having the audience see it, we're just seeing everybody's reactions to it, which is even more powerful.
It's a great movie. It really is. It's a masterpiece, and it's one of his best for sure.
So good.
How about we move on to Magnolia, which came out in 1999. IMDb, it's an 8.0. Rotten Tomatoes, it's an 82% critic score, 89% audience score. On one random day in the San Fernando Valley, a dying father, a young wife, a male caretaker, a famous lost son, a police officer in love, a boy genius, an ex-boy genius, a game show host, and an estranged daughter will each become part of a dazzling multiplicity of plots, but one story. It's a really fascinating script, and I feel like this is a movie that Hollywood and so many filmmakers tried to emulate and copy, this connected storyline between 6-7 characters, which is so hard to pull off effectively and execute. Paul Thomas Anderson did it brilliantly with Magnolia. It's one of his most 8.0 on IMDb. That's really high. That's his second highest rating on the platform.
Yeah, it is the second highest.
So I believe There Will Be Blood's an 8.2. So 8.0 on IMDb is an insanely good score, insanely good script, so well acted. The cast is absurd. It's an excellent movie. It's a long watch. There's a lot going on, but it's a great reward once you finish it.
It's worth it, and he was nominated for Best Original Screenplay for the film. It was moderately successful as well, made some money. It's just a fantastic ensemble. It's a very good LA movie. When I watch this film, I see so many things that I've driven past or been inside, and the cast is exceptional. This movie really is probably all around one of his better acted films. It's just he really leans into the actors, and when you got world-class performers, you just let them do what they do best. And they all go through immense turmoil. Tom Cruise, nobody had ever seen him do anything like this before. He was nominated for Best Supporting Actor. He could have won. That's how good he is. I could see him winning Best Supporting Actor for this film.
I mean, the scene with his father at the bed, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Incredibly emotional.
And the interview, the second half of the interview is just like very intense. This is his most intense film, I think. Because the second half, the last hour of this movie is intense. It's very suspenseful. It's very anxiety-inducing. And he's like stretching the suspense out.
For 7 characters.
And 7 characters they all hit like the precipice of chaos in the same 5 minutes. And you're just like cutting between them. And you're like, oh my God, this is just insurmountable thrills. I think this is his most intense movie. And sometimes it's his darkest too. I think the young boy, he has an extremely difficult life. He's got a mean father, and he's under so much pressure. And then you have the talk show host, Phil Baker Hall, who's a raging alcoholic and cheats on his wife, and he's just
Molested his
daughter, and also he's not got long left to live. Julianne Moore's character is married to Frank T.J. Mackey's dad, who's on his deathbed, and she's struggling to deal with that. She married him for money, but now she loves him, and he's dying. The irony is just insane.
Addicted to pills,
And there's so much going on. There's a lot of grief in the film. But it all does really tie to, I suppose, centered upon the game show host in his orbit. Like he's in a way, he's the centerpiece of everything, all the moving parts, because his daughter sees John C. Reilly's character, the cop. So everything orbits around the game show host.
Yeah, but also you could say that everything orbits around Frank's father, who owns the game show.
That's true. Yeah.
So it kind of he's the center of the connection for everybody in a lot of ways.
He's the top of the pyramid.
But the interesting thing about the game show, but everyone's connected through the dying father. The game show is really interesting because William H. Macy plays the ex-boy genius who, when he was a kid, was a star on the show. It's basically like who's smarter than a fifth grader, basically. And his parents exploited him for his talents and used him to get money, and then eventually took all of his money that he won. And he's just kind of living this tragic life of loneliness and waywardness and living off the fame a little bit of his past and his youth. But then you see the new boy genius, and you see basically a loop of what that life is going to be like, because his father's doing the same thing that William H. Macy's parents did to him. And you can see kind of what he could turn into with that life. The exploitation of children by their parents is really tragic, but the exploitation in general. But the cast of stars, I mean, you have Tom Cruise. Tommy Cruise is in this movie. Julianne Moore, Jason Robards, Phillip Seymour Hoffman, Pat Healy. Who else we got in this movie? Michael C. Hall, Patton Oswalt, and plenty of other great actors. IMDb has it in order of appearance. Thomas Jane is in this movie. Philip Baker Hall. So just an incredible, incredible cast of actors and actresses and John C. Reilly playing this cop who
loses his gun.
He's like a doofus, basically. He loses his gun, but he falls in love with this girl for a house call.
He's so dumb.
Music. He doesn't realize that she's an addict, but he like falls in love with that first sight. Asks her out at the house call, basically. And he's trying to get this relationship going because, he's hasn't been on a date in 3 years because he's been divorced for so long. And he's got he's a likable character. He's kind of this born-again Christian sort of guy. I like how he prays to the crucifix, and then he claps. He's like, all right, let's go.
But he's a happy-go-lucky guy in a way.
It's a bunch of interesting characters that, only PTA can come up with people
culminates in the raining frogs.
The raining frogs that prevents so many horrible things from happening. It prevents a suicide. It prevents, William H. Macy's character is robbing his job that he got fired from, but he tries to go bring the money back, but then a frog hits him in the face and he falls down.
Breaks his teeth. Oh my God.
The frogs basically prevent so much chaos and destructive behavior from these people who are about to undertake a horrible act, and it kind of saves people. And it's so biblical, obviously, because it happened in the Bible in Egypt, one of the plagues, the raining of frogs. So it's fascinating to see that in a contemporary sense, and what it means to the people and what happens to the people and how it can save lives in a way, or it's basically God, you could say, preventing them from doing things that they shouldn't be doing in a way.
And also the film opens with that interesting montage of the crazy coincidences.
Yeah.
Which is really a great opening 10 minutes.
Like the person in the pool that gets dug out, or the person that falls and the bullet hits them because they're falling.
The person jumps off a building and commit themselves, and then a floor several levels below him, there's a couple arguing, and one of them fires a gun and kills the man, and they get arrested for murder, even the guy was killing himself. Like these odd coincidences. Also the number
82 and 28.
82.
28 and 82.
Yeah, 82 and 28 is seen all throughout the film. Those two numbers are always seen.
It's a great movie.
Coincidences. It's a great movie. It's great, man. It's awesome.
Can't recommend it enough. How about we move on to Punch Drunk Love, which came out in 2002. IMDb, it's a 7.3. Rotten Tomatoes, 73% critic score, 77% audience score. Although susceptible to violent outbursts, bathroom supply business owner Barry Egan, played by Adam Sandler, is a timid and shy man by disposition, leading a lonely, uneventful life, partly due to the constant berating he suffers from his 7 sisters. However, several events transpire that shake up Egan's mundane existence, one of which is falling in love with one sister's coworker, Lena Leonard, played by Emily Watson. But the romance is threatened when Egan falls victim to an extortionist, played by Phillip Seymour Hoffman.
That's that, mattress man.
That's that.
Say that's that.
I have a love in my life, and it makes me stronger than you can ever imagine.
Punch Drunk Love is a very special, cool movie. It's got a great opening with the crashing car and the little what's that piano called?
It's a harmonium. Harmonium? Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
I think it's a harmonium. Let me double check.
But it's a really cool movie. Adam Sandler is absolutely phenomenal. It's his best performance, in my opinion, of all time. Better than Uncut Gems. Better than Uncut Gems. It's the best thing he's done as an actor, and he did a wonderful job with the drama and the comedy and the complex character. You never seen him really try that before. Like it's difficult. There are a lot of long takes where the camera barely moves and like he's on the phone for like 3 minutes straight, and he has to convey the entire scene. And he's not telling jokes; he's performing dramatically. So it was a big challenge for him, I'm sure, and very different from what he had ever done before. But he pulled it off. And then the comedy just really works. I think my favorite bit is in the restaurant. He goes into the bathroom and beats the shit out of the door, and he breaks the door and destroys the room.
Sir, did you destroy the bathroom?
Yeah, and then he leaves, and then one of the employees asks if you destroyed the bathroom. He's like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. He says, sir, your hand is bleeding. He's like, no, I didn't do that. And he goes, sir, I can't prove that you ruined our bathroom, but I'm gonna have to ask you to leave. Yeah, no, I didn't do that. It's so funny.
Well, it's a very complex character because of growing up with 7 sisters has led him to, like being berated his entire life. He's no confidence in himself. He's so anxious. He's so stressed out. And whenever anything is revealed about his personal life, he takes it so passionately and personally. That's why he destroys the bathroom, because Lena says something, oh, your sister said this about you. He's like, can you excuse me for a second? And he goes and destroys the bathroom because he's so stressed out.
It was like a fun childhood story that he's embarrassed about.
Exactly.
And that's why he breaks the sliding door in his sister's house with the hammer.
Because they keep berating. No, he just punches it.
No, he breaks it with a hammer.
He punches one and kicks another.
No, he bashes it with a hammer.
He punches, then kicks.
You sure? I'm pretty sure he's a
punch, then kick.
Pretty sure it's a hammer.
Pretty sure it's a punch and a kick. It's a punch, kick.
What's that? Is it a combination over here?
1, 1, 2. Punch, kick.
Punch, uppercut.
I know for a fact that one of them is a kick.
He need it.
It's a foot kick. Shatters it. But it's a complex character, and we were talking about this earlier, where Barry, he just wants some kind of connection to somebody. He can't connect with his sisters. He confesses he's got these emotional problems to one of his sister's husbands, who's a pediatrician, I think, and he's like, I'm not a psychiatrist. Like, I don't know what to do for you. I can give you a recommendation.
There's a movie that ripped that joke off this year, and I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
Expect
like, I'm a pediatrician. It was Shazam.
Yeah, it was Shazam.
It was in the trailer. I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
And Barry even the guy just calling about the business about plungers is like, oh, so you can call me on my home line anytime. Like, here's my number. You can call just anytime. He's like, yeah, I'll just get you at your office. Like, well, here's my personal number. I'll just call you. I'll just call you at the office.
And then also when he calls the yogurt company and he's like,
pudding company,
he's like prolonging that call.
Yes.
And the guy's like, oh, he asked me for my name.
And then that's why he's calling this sex chat line, because he's trying to find some sort of emotional connection in his life, because he has none. And then that gets him into this fraud situation with the mattress man, and the mattress man, played by Phillip Seymour Hoffman, basically begins to extort Barry. They have his information.
Shut up.
And they go to his house, they go to his apartments, and they extort him for money. And eventually he starts to have a relationship with Lena.
It's great. It's a great quirky romance.
Very sweet. It's very
But
cute.
because he's terrified of intimacy.
Yeah.
And so the few times she tries to talk to him or try to entice a move out of him, he like runs away out of fear.
It's like at her apartment, then he leaves the apartment, and he's like, oh, I should go back. Then
Yeah.
he can't find the apartment because
Yeah.
they all look the same.
Yeah.
And then he tries to use the pudding he has found this loophole in this pudding deal for a ton of free travel miles. So he starts cashing them in, but he has to wait 2 weeks to redeem them. But he still goes to Hawaii to see Lena anyways, and he offers his handshake, and she kisses him instead. It's very sweet. It's
That's
very
so
romantic.
cute. Yeah, that's a great silhouette shot.
But really, Lena is so important to him because finally he has an emotional connection. Finally, he has somebody that he can be with that isn't berating him, that isn't destroying him and tearing him apart like his sisters have done his entire life. And that's why it gives him kind of superhuman strength. And when those guys come back for more money,
brothers.
the four brothers, and they hit his car, and Lena gets hurt. He destroys these guys, and then he goes to find the mattress man to end the extortion, basically.
He did a great job filming that action scene. I want to see him film an action scene again because you feel the punches. You feel like the way he and Ellsworth carefully move the camera at certain moments. Like, holy fuck, you can see the impact is great. It's like incredible stunt
I mean, you
work.
could argue the times he's destroying property is good action sequences as well. So I think this movie's really special. It's very romantic and sweet. It's got this great fairy tale quality to it. In all of his movies, it's the fairy tale he's made, in my opinion. It's magical. It's got that old Hollywood flair, beautiful cinematography. I love the silhouettes, and I love the music. And it's really special. I mean, I think it's actually really connected to There Will Be Blood when it comes to the music.
It's also got like those, I wouldn't say title cards, but like animation cards.
Yeah.
Of the bokeh and like blended colors, like streams of light and colors blended together, animated. It's really nice.
I love this movie.
It's very, very unique in his filmography.
I think it's pretty underrated.
Yeah. Then he took a long break. He took 5 years in between his next film, but it was well worth the wait because it was
There Will Be Blood.
Oh, yeah.
Came out in 2007. IMDb, it's an 8.2.
a little low.
A little low for me too. Rotten Tomatoes, it is a 91% critic score. Imagine giving There Will Be Blood a rotten score on Rotten Tomatoes.
Unbelievable.
Imagine being the 9% of critics that actually do this for a living.
It's not that good.
It's rotten.
It was
It's-
okay.
It was fine. The best movie of the century was fine. 9% of critics gave There Will Be Blood a rotten review. Are you fucking high?
out of your fucking minds.
86% audience score. Ruthless silver miner turned oil prospector Daniel Plainview moves to oil-rich California, using his adopted son HW to project a trustworthy family man image. I'm a family man. Plainview cons local landowners into selling them their valuable properties for a pittance. However, local preacher Eli Sunday suspects Plainview's motives and intentions, starting a slow-burning feud that threatens both their lives. We did an episode on There Will Be Blood like 6 months ago for it was 3 hours long.
It's a good one.
It is one of the best episodes we've ever done.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
You got to check it out if you haven't already. It's a classic. It's a classic Raiders episode.
Yeah, it's one of the best ones we've ever done. Yeah, I agree.
And this is probably his most watched movie, his most beloved film. And everyone listening to this, you've probably watched this more than any other movie in his filmography, I'm guessing.
There are some really great masterpieces that unfortunately don't get much recognition with younger generations, especially on social media. But There Will Be Blood is one of those that does. And I'm really happy for that because I think it's the best film of the century. And I see people posting about it all the time. It's always on lists.
Letterboxd Top 100. It's on
Letterboxd
there.
Top 100. So it gets a lot of attention, even from young people who are getting into movies. Like, they are watching it, which makes me really happy because I think it is the best film of the century. I would put Parasite, Oppenheimer, and a couple others up there as well. Be an interesting list to make, actually. But There Will Be Blood, I think, stands atop.
Talladega Nights.
Talladega Nights. Deuce Bigelow. Features possibly the greatest performance of all time. Oscar-winning cinematography. A brilliant story. An early breakout role from Paul Dano. An insanely brilliant score from Johnny Greenwood, his second for a film, as well as some Penderecki music. And there's just something about this film. It's so special, it's so tangible, it's stunning, it's glorious to behold. It's dark, it's violent, it's bloody. It's really engaging, very entertaining. But every decision he made as a director was just incredible, and his approach to every scene is just magnificent. There's nothing about this film that I don't like. This film is just magic, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, obviously watch that episode as we break it down for 3 hours, but it's a perfect movie. It's so well acted, so well made, such a good screenplay. The story is unlike anything you've ever seen before. Daniel Plainview, this guy who's just in the middle of the desert trying to find some silver by himself, finds some, starts digging for oil.
End of movie.
End of movie.
He found it.
Found the silver. Cashes in. But then to just see what he becomes, all he wants is to be the best and the wealthiest and to destroy the competition. And then what's that leads him to? Isolation and loneliness and being an alcoholic, shooting guns in his hallway of his mansion and turning away his son, his surrogate son. Again, surrogate family, a common theme in Paul Thomas Anderson films. I mean, obviously, there's not much more we can say that we've already said about this movie in several episodes of our show.
Yeah.
But it's so good.
It really is.
It's so good.
It really
and it's
is.
crazy because Paul Thomas Anderson has made so many good movies, but he's made a movie like There Will Be Blood where it clearly stands out among a filmography of an all-time great as a different level, a different stratosphere of film.
I mean, it stands out in 20 years of movies. It stands out.
It's absurd.
And it's on the tops of a lot of top 10 lists and critical lists and editorial lists. It really is, I think, the most respected film.
I think it's just going to keep aging so well. I think it really will in 10, 20, 30 years. This will be considered even better than it is now. A lot of movies take time to really be appreciated. Not that this isn't an appreciated film.
Gotta let it cook.
You gotta let that stuff
Gotta
cook,
marinate,
man. You gotta let
man.
it settle. Let recency bias follow in. So it's only came out in 2007, man. It hasn't been that long. It's been 16 years. That's not that long.
Wow.
Makes me feel pretty old. That's not a long period of time. People still talking about Blade Runner today. They're still talking about Alien. They're still talking about
talking about Alien, really?
2001: Space Odyssey. So I'm really. This is one of those movies that when I envision my future when it comes to being a film fan and a cinephile and working in the film industry is how will people look back on this film in 20 years and 30 years? And I think it's just going to age so well.
Yeah, well, that's a good point because when you look back on film history, for every decade, there's a handful of films that you always think of. And in 50 years, we'll be looking back at the 2000s and be like, There Will Be Blood came out in the 2000s. That came out in 2007. That was without a doubt, the best year of that decade. It'll be like one of those movies where how we always bring up a movie like Blade Runner, people will always bring up a movie like There Will Be Blood. It will separate itself from the rest of the pack.
Yeah, that's the thing. Because when you're living in the moment and you're living with these new films that come out, even if it's been 5-10 years, you can't really understand the depth in the length of time and how much that plays a factor of how great a movie is in its longevity and how important it will be to cinema. I think this movie is important to cinema, obviously, and people feel that, but I think it's just going to be, for the future of cinema, it's going to be an all-timer that people always look back on, and this better be played in every film class ever.
They better be teaching this.
If they ain't teaching this in film class, I don't know what the fuck they're teaching y'all.
Terminator 2.
I mean, yeah, Terminator 2 as well. It's a great movie, man.
T2 is a fucking perfect movie. I can't believe his professor said that.
Dude, T2 is awesome.
Yeah.
We showed it to one of our friends the first time she'd ever seen the movie. It's her favorite movie of all time.
Yeah.
Her favorite movie of all time.
It's the best action movie
After
ever.
we watched it, she's like, that's the best movie I've ever seen. I'm like, isn't it great?
Some people are so pretentious that they look at it as it's a sci-fi action movie, though, so it's not a real movie.
Yeah, I remember when I took a screenplay class when I was in college, the professor was so pretentious and he'd never done anything before. He had no credits. He never sold a
Zero.
script. But then he was like, the way he instructed his class, he was so demeaning and tearing everybody's script apart. I understand we were 19, not great writers, but still, like, some of us had some pretty good ideas that I'm sorry it didn't work from your perspective, but the fuck have you done?
Yeah, and I remember I had a film professor. He was bragging about getting a meeting to sell a script that he wrote, and I was like,
Did he sell it?
dude, you're like in your 50s and you're bragging about having a meeting to your fucking students? Come on, man.
But did he sell the script?
No.
Then why would you even bring that up?
Some people like to toot their own horn, especially people.
But what horn are you tooting?
Well, some people like to advertise that something might happen, so they'll have
something almost.
So they'll brag about a meeting.
It almost happened, man.
They're not gonna brag about a success they had. They're gonna brag about, oh, I have a meeting on Wednesday. Congratulations! How many meetings has that person taken every day?
Quite a few.
You're one of a huge, huge list.
Let's move on to to The Master. How do you follow up There Will Be Blood? You follow up with The Master in 2012. IMDb, it's a 7.1.
Whoa.
Wow. Shockingly low, in my opinion. Rotten Tomatoes, 85% critic score, 62% audience score. I think this is a misunderstood movie. Freddie Quell, played by Joaquin Phoenix, is a troubled, boozy drifter struggling with the trauma of World War II and whatever inner demons ruled his life before that. On a fateful night in 1950, Freddie boards a passing boat and meets Lancaster Dodd, played by Phillip Seymour Hoffman, the charismatic leader of a religious movement called The Cause. Freddie tries hard to adhere to Dodd's weird teachings and forms a close bond with his mentor, even as other members of Dodd's inner circle see him as a threat.
I just watched this last night.
It still holds up.
It's awesome, man.
It's a sensational film, beautifully shot. We talked about it earlier with the cinematography. I think it's his best-looking movie, Paul Thomas Anderson's. I think it's Joaquin Phoenix's best role. Everyone always brings up Joker, but I mean, if you watch The Master, he's operating on such an insane level for an actor, as well as Philip Seymour Hoffman. He's sensational in this movie. But this movie's... I'd never seen anything like it before. I know I've said that a couple times this episode, but The Master is incredibly unique, not just in PTA's filmography, but in cinema in general. There really hasn't been a movie like this. And the plot is not as strong as...
It's plotless.
Yeah, it's not as strong as like the typical story. It's really, even though it's called The Master, it's about Freddy. We're following Freddy the whole time. It's not about Lancaster Dodd. It's about Freddy. Freddy's the opening, Freddy's the beginning, Freddy's the end. And I think what Joaquin Phoenix did in this movie it's really special. It's comparable to Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood. And I think that says so much to Paul Thomas Anderson as a director when I brought up earlier how he really pulls career best performances out of people. He really knows how to direct actors.
And Joaquin's a big improviser, and he never does the same acting in a scene twice. And there are instances where he was like surprising even the crew. And he's always an unexpected actor, and Paul Thomas Anderson does a great job of setting up scenes and letting him do his thing. Like the mall fight is one of those scenes. There are a couple moments, because I watched it last night, so it's fresh in my mind. There are a couple moments where the cameraman wasn't exactly sure which direction he was going to move or which angle he was going to take. So there are definitely moments where they're just like, all right, just try to follow him.
And also the moment where Freddy comes back to Lancaster and the group and the community at their home in that neighborhood, and basically he's going through that humiliation stage, and Lancaster's putting him through this thing where you have to go touch the wall, touch the other wall, touch the window, touch the wall. And Freddy starts jumping around, and he jumps in the air really high, and Philip Seymour Hoffman gets off his chair to stop him from hitting the lamp above his head, the chandelier above his head. That's definitely, like, didn't mean to do that. That's like something that, Philip Seymour Hoffman, thank God you're watching.
So the prison scene is one of those where he broke the toilet. Nobody knew he would do that. And
I hope he didn't do it on the first take, because then they needed a new toilet.
I think he did it on the first. They could have done other takes, but good thing they had a 2-shot setup, so they had enough coverage of both angles. But you can see the camera, like, they don't know which way he's gonna go. And also the mall sequence, the oneer where he attacks that man. I know that the
photography scene.
Yeah, the photography scene. I know they choreographed some stuff, but the cameraman and crew clearly didn't know exactly what he was going to do.
Dude, when he pulls his tie and starts to choke him?
It's legit. Like, they're really hitting each other.
Yeah.
And then when he goes across the mall, the cameraman is just, like, trying to keep him in frame because he's so unpredictable as an actor. But that's what's special about him. That's what makes him great. And so I think Paul Thomas Anderson loves that and encourages it. And obviously he worked with him again because he's so brilliant. But I think this is his best performance for sure. I think he fully immersed himself in this role, and he's just really incredible as Freddy. And the idea of the Master is really cool. It's not just the Master being Lancaster Dodd, but in a way, everybody's a master to somebody. Freddy's a master. Freddy's looking for a master. He probably will never find one. He's a wild animal who can't be tamed. Lancaster tries to tame him, but he can't. And so in a way, he lives without a master. Whereas Lancaster, the title might make you think that he is the master, and people do call him master, but he is serving a master. He's serving the cause. He's serving this beast that he created, and he's the master to the cause. That's why he has to keep it going. That's why he has to keep writing. That's why he has to keep working. He clearly isn't enjoying it anymore, but he's become basically a slave to this master that he created.
It's ironic because it's all fabricated.
Exactly, and he's so he's so incapable of doing it anymore that he's struggling to write a second book, and so when he realizes he can't write the second book, what's he do? He digs up the first book he ever wrote in the desert and puts that off as the second book that he's apparently been working on. And so he's become a master to the cause, even though he created it.
He's become a master to...
I mean, I'm sorry, he's become a slave to the cause. The cause is his master.
Yeah, and you could also argue he's become a master to the lie he's created. He's become a master to this illusion.
Become a slave to it, or
yeah, like he has to keep it going because
Yeah.
that's how he makes his money. He's a very successful guy, and the community he's built is as important to him, and being the master of these people. So he's a master to a lie. What kind of life is that? It's a really interesting character.
Are you saying he's a slave to the lie or a master to the
I'm
lie?
sorry, he's a slave. So the lie is the master. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah.
I'm sorry.
You keep wording it backwards.
Yeah, that was kind of weird wording. Thank you for correcting me, Anthony. But also, this movie is really fascinating. I love the opening. It's so gorgeously shot, this film. It really is. And I love the thematic elements of World War II and PTSD. Now, John Huston made this documentary called Let There Be Light back in 1949. And it showed the effects of soldiers and coming back from World War II in America. And it was actually banned by the U.S. government for 35 years. No one could see this movie because of how intense it was and how real it was. It showed the effects of war on these men, the PTSD they suffered from. And a lot of the shots, a lot of the sequences are basically heavily influenced.
Oh, John Ford shot that documentary?
John Huston made it.
John Huston made it? Oh, my
He
God.
made Let There Be Light.
Oh,
So
wow.
PTA recreated a lot of the shots and basically the sequences
Costumes, yeah.
of, Freddie and these other soldiers in these rooms and these being interviewed, showing these photos, the ink blots, and then being interviewed and analyzed, and these groups. It's so identical to the documentary that John Huston made. It's really fascinating. But taking that as a thematic element and as a character trait for Freddie is really fascinating because it's sort of like Vietnam, where a lot of these soldiers, now they're forgotten. What they went through has been forgotten for the most part. But there are still memories and imprints of it in a lot of culture, like movies, Saving Private Ryan. Or I think this is a great example of showing the effects of war on human beings, the effects of war on men, watching your brothers in arms dying in front of you, killing people for your country, thinking you're doing the right thing, and what it does to a human being, and how it can create somebody like Freddie. Freddie, who's been created not only from the traumas of his past before he went to war, but also what war has created him into. From being the soldier, and you can only imagine the things that he's done. And you can also imagine the life that Freddie would have led if he had an honest upbringing, if he didn't have this foster mother that he had this sexual relationship with, if he didn't go to war, if he had good parents, a good home, a happy family. He could have been probably anything. Because there's so much potential there. And I think that's why Lancaster's so connected to him, because he sees the potential of Freddie. He sees the fearlessness of Freddie. He's the most fearless boy he's ever met, I think he says. This boy could have been anything. So now let me open him up, vulnerability, get that out in the open, which he eventually does. He breaks Freddie open, makes him so vulnerable that he's able to mold him, and he becomes malleable to whatever he wants until Freddie leaves. Then Freddie comes back, and then he molds him again into something else until Freddie leaves again. And then when he comes back the third time, he turns Lancaster down. He doesn't want to stay there. And Lancaster says that ridiculous thing where I love their final scene together, where Lancaster and the cause are at this big building, right? And
In Britain.
The Britain. He's got this huge office, this massive office with his desk just in this huge room. And he's basically, Freddie's been berated by him and his wife subtly, and then Lancaster gives him options like, you could stay here or you can leave. If you leave, I never want to see you again. But then he tells him what he saw of them in their past and their connection. He makes up that BS story about them sending messages in Paris with balloons in World War II, and they only lost 2 messages of 80 balloons and blah, 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 and there was a siege of the city. And you can assume that Lancaster probably read this in a book and is pawning it off as one of his past memories from a past life that he had to try to lure Freddy back into his world because the master, Lancaster, just needs someone to control. He wants to control Freddy. But he's connected to Freddy in a lot of ways. And I think that scene is so terrific because Freddy turns him down.
But then he says, so Freddy says, "Oh, maybe in the next life."
Yeah.
And then Lancaster goes, "In the next life, we will be sworn enemies, and I will show you no mercy."
I'm just like, what is this guy talking about? The whole time.
And this movie's famously loosely based on Scientology and L. Ron Hubbard, inspiring Lancaster Dodd. And I think Paul Thomas Anderson and Tom Cruise had a good relationship during and after Magnolia, but then I think that this film rubbed Tom Cruise the wrong way. I'm not sure. I know that Paul Thomas Anderson gave him a private screening of The Master, respectfully, to be like, "Hey, I made this movie. It's loosely based on your religion."
You're Tom Cruise.
But I'm not sure how Tom Cruise feels about it. But they were quite close.
Yeah, but also let's not act like Tom Cruise is the only Scientologist in Hollywood. There are quite a few.
Oh, no, I'm just saying because
Yeah.
he showed it to him
Yeah, I know.
personally.
Yeah.
You know?
So maybe he felt personal about it. But I think, I don't mean like you. I mean like a lot of the.
Are you attacking
the
me?
media made it seem like I remember when this movie came out, the media was going after Tom Cruise, saying PT is going after Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Remember, like that was like a lot of headlines. Was Paul Thomas Anderson attacks Tom Cruise in Scientology? It's like, relax. Tom Cruise isn't the only Scientologist in Hollywood, but he's the biggest name.
Sounds like you are a Scientologist now.
Who, me? Dude, my thetans are off the charts right now. I have so many thetans.
You're like, shut up about Scientology. It's a beautiful thing.
You know shit about fuck Anthony. They promised me the world. They said I'm gonna be the next Tom Cruise, man.
All they needed was all my money.
Yeah, they just want 4 payments of $10,000 in the next 3 weeks. But my thetans, they said, were really high. They said that's good.
That's good. That's funny.
It's an incredible movie, The Master. I think it's. I said it was my number 2 on his filmography, or no, number 3. I'm sorry, Boogie Nights is number 2. It's a masterwork. It really is.
From The Master.
From The Master in The Master. PTA.
All right, what do we got next?
We have 3 movies left. Let's move on to
Nice.
Inherent Vice, which came out in 2014. This, I think, is the lowest rated on PTA's career. IMDb, it's a 6.6. Rotten Tomatoes, 74% critic score, 53% rotten.
Audiences have not really liked
Audiences.
this last half of his career.
In a California beach community, private detective Larry Doc Sportello, played by Joaquin Phoenix,
The Massachusetts guy.
tends to work his cases through a smoky haze of marijuana as well as other substances. One day, Shasta, a former lover, arrives out of the blue to plead for Doc's help. It seems that Shasta's current beau... I've only seen this movie once.
Shasta Fe.
Rich real estate tycoon Mickey Wolfman has a wife who may be plotting to commit him to a mental hospital. When Mickey and Shasta both disappear, Doc investigates the psychedelic world of surfers, stoners, and cops to solve the case. It's based off a book.
Yeah, I love this movie. It's really funny, and it's wild. It's unpredictable. Martin Short's in it.
A lot of people in this movie, man.
He's fucking crazy in this.
Owen Wilson's got a great role.
Wilson's great in it.
I love the 12 disciples and the Last Supper metaphor.
Yeah, with the pizzas. And Josh Brolin and Joaquin Phoenix are amazing together. They're so funny together. Their dynamic is wonderful.
Benicio del Toro is great in this movie.
Yeah, Benicio is fantastic as well. And then Catherine Waters, this was her breakout movie. You've seen her in a ton of things nowadays. She was in the Fantastic Beasts franchise. She plays Newt's beau.
Listen, Anthony, she is not Newt's beau. She's her
an
own
aura.
independent wizard.
She's an aura.
She's her own witch, Anthony.
You just called her a wizard.
Which
is it, Jim?
Cancelled.
Got him. We did it, guys. We did it.
Took 3 years.
See you later, man.
We got him.
Might as well get out of here, man. Pack up.
We're putting someone else in this chair.
But Inherent Vice is... I understand why audiences don't like it at 53%. I understand. It's a slow, dense investigation film that has no action. Except for... It has like a shootout, but it's like a PTA shootout. It's not like a shootout. It's not like a shoot 'em up. But what's funny is he and this guy get into a shootout in the stairs, and they both fire off their revolvers, and then Joaquin goes, "Did I hit you?" So funny. Oh my god, so funny. But he gets into so many hijinks, and I love the cast of characters. It's very creative, great score, amazing cinematography.
There's some really great shots in this movie with the boats in the background while they're doing the tracking shot of Benicio and Joaquin. It's incredible.
It's very intricate and very complicated, but he makes it look easy. Reese Witherspoon's very good in it as well. She plays his girlfriend. But I understand why audiences don't like it, but I really love it. I enjoy this film a lot.
The thing with Inherent Vice is PTA just seems like he was having fun. And him and Joaquin, like, let's just make a funny comedy. And it's hard to follow. I get your first watch. Second watch, it's a lot better.
You said you've only seen it once.
Yeah, I've only seen it once. No, I haven't seen it twice. Okay. I've seen it twice. Now that I think about it. Because he's basically kind of putting you in the headspace of Doc. Because he's the stoner hippie. He's so confused the whole time. You're so confused the whole time.
That's exactly the point. Yeah.
So that's the point of the movie is like he's putting you in his shoes. He's putting you in Doc's shoes. And the thing with PTA, he's so attentive. He's so detailed and meticulous with the way he tells stories and films. He's doing it on purpose. Like everything.
It's not like it's a mistake. He knows he's doing it to be confusing.
Like I've seen reviews of this movie where people call it like a chaotic mess. It's like, what are you like? He's doing it. It's not a mess. It's done on purpose. It's not a mess. It's strategic. It's supposed to be like that.
Strategery.
It's supposed to be like that. And I think it requires a second watch for sure. But it's a funny movie. He just went, let's make something funny. Let's make something silly.
It's light.
It's his light. It might be his lightest movie. I mean,
it's definitely his lightest.
Phantom Thread's pretty light.
No, it's not.
It's pretty light moments in Phantom Thread.
There's some light moments. Doesn't mean it's light.
It's very sweet sometimes.
Sometimes.
The first time, we'll get to the Phantom Thread in a minute. But, I mean, Inherent Vice, like you said, it's not for everybody. I think that it's just a misunderstood movie for sure. But I love how PTA just went in a completely different direction than people expect in his career, especially coming off, obviously, There Will Be Blood, then The Master. Like, oh, what's he going to do next? People are like, what is this movie, Inherent Vice?
Yeah.
I think it's fun.
Yeah.
I like mysteries. I think
PI
movies.
Thomas Price is the author?
It's like Chinatown with a stoner.
Exactly.
Chinatown with a stoner in the 1970s in L.A.
And the button shops are great.
Still, yeah. It's just a silly movie. It's fun. It's a good time. 2 movies left. Phantom Thread came out in 2017.
Nice.
IMDb is 7.4. Rotten Tomatoes, 91% critic score, 71% audience score. Renowned dressmaker Reynolds Jeremiah Woodcock, and his sister Cyril are at the center of British fashion in 1950s London, dressing royalty, movie stars, heiresses, socialites, and debutantes. Women come and go in Woodcock's life, providing the confirmed bachelor with inspiration and companionship. His carefully tailored existence soon gets disrupted by Alma, a young and strong-willed woman who becomes his muse and lover. What a sensational film. I watched this last night to prep for this episode. 5th time I've watched it.
I heard it. I heard the music, and I heard Reynolds saying, "It's as if you're rode a horse through the house." It's entirely too much movement for breakfast.
I can't begin the day with a confrontation. It's such a good movie. It's so well acted. It's sensational. And it's really unique. I don't want to keep saying the same thing over again, but there's nothing like this movie. And the tone is so intricate and specific. That's what makes it so unique. The tone. This character, Reynolds Woodcock, this confirmed bachelor who we learned so early on, always has a woman in his life who he entertains for a little while until she can't stand being with him anymore, and eventually Cyril asks her to leave.
No, he can't stand being with her.
Well, both. They can't stand waiting for him to fall in love with him.
Yeah, but they want to be with him.
They can't wait for him anymore.
Yeah.
He can't stand them. Eventually Cyril asks him to leave. This has probably happened 100 times in the last 50 years of his entire life. You know what I mean? His entire life, Cyril and him have this system, this routine of what they run with this dressmaking with the House of Woodcock and how connected they are, as well as this guy who has mommy issues, and is eventually this woman Alma comes into his life to kind of try and solve them.
That's why he opens the film with the routine of Reynolds Woodcock, because of how important routine is to him. It's the only PTA film that we open with a routine of a character, a day in the life of him getting ready, getting dressed, combing his hair.
Well, I mean, There Will Be Blood's kind of a day in the life.
I mean, not necessarily. He's digging for silver.
That's what he does every day.
That's what he does this month.
Day of the life.
Shut up.
Day in the life.
My God. He didn't show him, like, taking a shit.
I'm sorry, did Reynolds Woodcock take a shit in this movie?
Yes.
Well, he does. We don't see it, though.
Yeah, he does.
We hear it.
But
I
it's,
think you should probably leave.
okay, montage of a day in the life.
Thank you.
Digging is not a day in the life. It's not the routine. It's just what he's doing. But it's because routine is his life. Everything about it. It's repetitive. It's redundant. But he thrives on it. And that's why when something offsets his routine, it ruins him. And it can affect his entire day. Especially breakfast. So that's why PTA opens with that beautiful montage of him getting ready, and then also House of Woodcock getting prepared, and employees coming in, and Cyril making sure the staff are all ready. It's a wonderful opening sequence. It's the only movie he's done that has an opening sequence like this. But he did it for that reason. This is a really breathtaking performance by Daniel Day-Lewis. He studied for a year as a couture dressmaker under like one of the greatest fashion couture designers and makers alive. He does this guy does the New York Opera or something, and then Daniel Day-Lewis was just his assistant for a year. Isn't that wild? Imagine like walking into a room and then Daniel Day-Lewis is assisting someone.
The greatest actor to ever live.
It's crazy. It's unbelievable. But it got to the point where he prepped so much that his final step was making an entire couture dress by hand himself, which is extremely difficult, apparently. And so he put in the work, and it pays off. I can understand why he retired after this. He did say that. So I think that PTA used Daniel Day as a little inspiration for the character of Reynolds, because you can compare Reynolds when he finishes a new line and they do the show. It's chaotic. He puts all of his energy and his life into the designs, into the dressmaking, into the showing. And then once the fashion show is done and the line is finished, he is depressed and he's lethargic and he needs to be taken care of. Alma takes care of him. And in a way, he's just lost every bit of energy in life. And I've seen in plenty of interviews I've read that Daniel Day-Lewis suffers from the same thing. When he finishes a big role, it's difficult for him to recover. It takes him a long time to readjust to reality because he put so much into it. I think that PTA borrowed from Daniel Day-Lewis's life for creating this character. And Daniel Day-Lewis actually helped make the character, too. He actually came up with the name Reynolds Woodcock. That was his idea. So I'm sure he added plenty of bits here and there. But you can see that, and that's what led to his retiring after this film. He said that it was too difficult of a recovery process, and he doesn't ever want to do it again.
I don't blame him. I mean, he's got nothing left to prove.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the greatest to ever live and will be the greatest to ever be an actor. So no need to come back. And Phantom Thread is really special. It's beautifully shot. It's gorgeous cinematography. And Paul Thomas Anderson and his gaffer doing it is sensational. I mean, they really made a movie look this good. And not, I mean, obviously they've been on sets there for decades, but to be the cinematographer of your own movie and make it look this good,
It's great.
that's absurd.
Like Alfonso Cuarón and PTA and Soderbergh, that's it.
They're really incredible. And the character in the stories, it's sensational. This guy, he's got this routine. Confirmed bachelor. His life is routine and making these dresses. And he's avoided relationships his whole life because of his mother passing. And he can't let it go. He can't move on from the loss of his mother. He sews her into his suits, into his gowns. He sews bits of his mother over his chest on his own wardrobe because he wants to be close to her. And he tells Alma that for the first time on their first date, and she's, that's pretty weird, dude. It's a little odd.
Red flag.
Red flag, but also,
She's with me in the breast.
always keep her with you. Do you have a photo of your mother?
She's in the, what's he say? She's in the fabric or something?
Yeah, she's in her hair. A lock of her hair
She's
is
in
the
the
fabric,
fabric,
of his suit.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of him hiding secrets in wardrobe and things that he creates. But Alma comes into his life and is the first woman in his life to kind of challenge him and to stand up for herself against him and to sort of...
He's a bully and he's a
He
brat.
is, and
yeah.
he's fussy. He's a little too fussy.
He's a brat.
But she's the first woman to come in his life to challenge him, stand up to him, as well as replace his mother in his life of adoration. And it takes a long time for her to get to that point. And of course, it eventually leads to the mushrooms, which, I mean, this is kind of spoiler
Yeah,
territory.
we're 2.5
Yeah.
hours in. If they're still listening,
Sorry,
they've seen
for
it.
the hungry boy. We're spoiling the Phantom Thread right now. I thought the first time I thought this movie, I thought she was gonna kill him.
Yeah.
I was watching this movie. I thought she was gonna poison
Same.
and kill Reynolds, and I thought he was gonna die. But really, what she's doing is trying to get him back to his tender moments
Flat on his back.
where he's not fussy. Because, like you said earlier, at the end of his line, he's destroyed. He's depressed. He's tired. He's exhausted. He can't get out of bed, and Alma's taking care of him, and that's her favorite time she spent with him was taking care of him after that. And then eventually he gets very fussy. He's getting irritable. He's hard to be around. She poisons him with those mushrooms to get him very sick so that he has to be taken care of by Alma. And
She found out that the key to the relationship was making him dependent on her for a short period of time, like every few months, to be completely dependent on her and need to be taken care of. The mommy issues coming in at bay. She needs the mom. He needs to have a mommy every once in a while. That's what it is.
And if he doesn't have that situation, he just gets too worked up, too fussy, too irritable,
Too cranky.
After a long period of time, then she has to give him those mushrooms and work it out.
Because after the first time she takes care of him and nurses him back to health, he proposes.
Yeah.
Nobody had ever taken care of him since his mother passed away, and he immediately the next morning proposes.
Yeah, because he also says those lines where he's like, I've made mistakes in my life, and I want to correct them. As also, there's things I want to do in my life that I've never realized I wanted to do, basically. You know, obviously, I think that's starting a family and having a child and being married and having a wife. And I think that's obviously what happens. But then eventually,
He goes
gets
back, he
irritable
resets,
again. He gets
resets,
cranky.
yeah.
He resets to
It's
get
a loop.
And she does it again. She poisons him again.
She realizes, like, I have to facilitate this, and I think she thought, oh, he's changed. He only changed for a little bit, and then he got back to normal, his normal Reynolds, and then she's like, okay, I need to even the playing field again and make some more mushrooms.
Yeah, because they get married, and then things just start to go bad. And Reynolds has that outburst on Cyril that he doesn't realize Alma's listening to behind her.
nobody gives a tinker's fuck about Mrs. Vaughn's satisfaction.
She casts a shadow in this house. She doesn't belong here. I've made a terrible mistake in my life, Cyril. I need you to help me fix it. And then one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie, one of my favorite moments, is when Reynolds figures out what Alma's been up to with the mushrooms, and she's making that omelet with the mushrooms, and he's just doing his designs on the country, and he's
just,
watching
like,
her
eyeing
prepare.
her.
He's like, no way. Is that really, she poisoned me? And then he accepts it and eats it because he knows what's going on. And I think he wants it, and he understands finally what Alma's trying
He
to do.
absolutely accepts it. He takes the bite himself. He knows what it's going to do to him. And then that's why he says, kiss me before I am sick. It's a great scene. It's great
It's a great
scene.
movie. It's so
And that's why at the end, he's lying in her lap in front of the fireplace, and he goes, I'm getting hungry.
Yeah.
He wants to get poisoned again.
No, he's not. No, he doesn't want to get poisoned again. He's hungry for food, but he's also hungry for a relationship. He's hungry for love.
No. He's hungry for mushrooms. At the end of the film when he says that, he's implying it's time to poison me.
I always interpreted that he's coming out of the sickness.
That's why he
Because he's-
says I'm starting to get hungry. Means I want another omelet. Time to poison me again.
No,
He wants to be taken care of again.
No, I always interpreted that he's hungry for love. He's hungry for the relationship. He's hungry for food.
No.
Because he's coming out of it. Just like when he's coming out of his past relationship and he eats all that food when he first meets Alma, he orders everything off the menu, basically.
Yeah. I completely disagree.
Well, I disagree with you.
The way I see the ending is she's doing that narration, and then we cut to her, and he's lying in her lap in front of the fire, and then he says, "I'm starting to get hungry."
No, but he would not be on her lap if he was his fussy self. If he's at the point where he's so fussy that she has to poison him, he would not be letting her comfort him. He would not be on her lap at all. There'd be no physical.
No, why would he say it?
Because he's coming out of the sickness.
No
He's
way.
been sick.
No way.
The whole sequence
No
is she got her sick that moment. He's coming out of it.
No, I think he's hungry for another mushroom omelet. Is what he's saying. That's what
I
he's
don't know,
saying.
because he wouldn't be being.
Yeah, sure he would.
intimate
Like
with her.
they were still. I mean, they still slept together and stuff.
No, because he can't stand her by the point when he needs.
No, but
to-
still, like he knows that like she will. They get once they have the understanding, that changes the dynamic. So once he understood that she's poisoning him, he accepted it. And after that omelet, that's what really changed the dynamic. And so now their relationship, I imagine, is better, but still, he's still a baby. But still, I think after the omelet, their relationship is more intimate and more loving. But still, he needs that every once in a while. So when he says, I'm starting to get hungry, he's basically saying, I want to get taken care of like a baby.
He is a
Time
big
to feed me another mushroom omelet.
He is a big baby.
That's what he's saying.
He is a big baby.
That's the ending.
Good
Good night. Thank you very much.
I don't give a tinker's fuck. Sensational film. Incredible.
End of story.
Good night. All right, last movie to talk about.
I'm quoting Mad Eye Moody, by the way.
Licorice Pizza came out in 2021. Paul Thomas Anderson's last film. IMDb, it's a 7.1. Rotten Tomatoes, 90% critic score, 66% audience score. Alana Kane, a directionless woman of the age 25, and Gary Valentine, a teen actor, grow up, run around. And
Valentine. Who says it like Valentine?
Some people say it. Gary Valentine, a teen actor, grow up, run around, and fall in love in California's San Fernando Valley in the 1970s.
This is, I think, his most personal film. It's very much like this is the world he grew up in, and he put it on a movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The personal story, its origins, like I mentioned earlier, with him having a crush on his teacher, an older woman, the Valley, so many, I'm sure, callbacks with the music, with locations, with sets, with the designs, with the cars. It seems like this movie was Paul Thomas Anderson's childhood, teenage years in film.
I think it's a special movie, and we saw this projected on film.
Oh, yeah.
In Westwood, which was a great experience. They had the whole theater like decked out with Licorice Pizza, and they had like signs, but they had like pinball machines and stuff like that. It was really fun, and I really adored this movie. And it's PTA's only problematic movie for some of the public. You know, Gary's 15, Alana's 25, so a lot of people don't like to watch this movie or don't want to watch this movie. I understand that perspective. Yeah. You don't have to watch if you don't want to.
Sure.
If it makes you uncomfortable, you don't have to. But the way I see it is there's really no intimacy in this movie. They kiss at the end of the movie, but besides that, this entire movie is just really about their connection, about their relationship. There's no intimacy. Alana never really makes moves on Gary. She's not basically, what's the term that people say? Grooming him.
Oh,
she's not grooming Gary.
No. They're friends and business partners.
They're friends, business partners, but there's a connection there. And, you know, obviously they like touch their feet and stuff like that. And they address the age issues. The first conversation they have is talking about the age
multiple
difference.
times, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think it's a problematic movie for me to watch. I mean, same thing with Call Me By Your Name. Elio's 17, and, I mean, people have a problem with that. Oliver's 23.
24.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with it, watching a movie like that. And Elio's a little older and closer to being 18 years old. Obviously, it's European. It's 1970s. It's a little different than, I think, this. But, you know, I think it's one of the, I think.
Yeah, just move on. Yeah,
let's
talk about the movie.
Yeah. you have to address
go on
it.
a 10-minute fucking speech about this. We get it.
I guess we'll maybe cut that up a little bit.
So the movie's awesome. They're both terrific actors. They did a great job. Alana's really fantastic, and I think she really carries the movie. The music's great. Awesome tracks, awesome needle drops. I love it. I just love the vibes. I love the interiors of all these cool 70s restaurants in LA that haven't aged. They haven't changed at all. They still look the same. And one of the benefits to shooting in LA is a lot of houses and a lot of buildings were built in the 70s, and they haven't been updated. So it's pretty easy to film movies in LA if you want to make them a period setting this far back. And so he took advantage of that. And all sorts of fun elements like the gasoline drought, and there's that huge line of cars.
Bradley Cooper's cameo.
Yeah, Bradley Cooper's fucking hysterical in this. Barbara Streisand. And I love the character of Gary and all of his hustles, all of his different things. He's always trying to make a buck. He does act like a 30-year-old in a 15-year-old's body. He's always just focused on achieving success and being a businessman, and he's doing things that no other 15-year-old would do. He's employing people who are adults.
PTA kind of flipped their ages
Yes. Yeah.
And so like she's the immature one and he's the mature one in a lot of ways, and like has direction in life she doesn't.
Do you think it's weird that I hang out with Gary and his 13-year-old friends all the time?
Yeah.
I think it's weird that I hang out with Gary and his 13-year-old friends all the time.
15-year-old.
15-year-old friends.
It's funny, it's sweet, it's lighthearted, and it's really emotional too. You really connect with these characters and you connect with their relationship, and you really feel the love that they have for each other.
Yeah. John C. Reilly has a great cameo in it.
There are a lot of great cameos.
Sean Penn's also in it.
Sean
Yeah.
Penn's got a great cameo in this as well.
Tom Waits is great in it. He plays his friend in the restaurant.
Yeah, it's silly, it's fun, but it's one of a kind, man. No one makes movies like PTA.
No, it's beautifully shot. It's really, really stunning cinematography. I love the way his movies look so much. They're so good. He doesn't care about imperfections. He doesn't care about a light being blown out. He doesn't care about, it's not perfect. Like, he's just like, let's just make it look real. It's great.
It's very funny too. It's a funny movie.
It's really funny. It's really funny.
Like
It's
when
one
the
of his
kids are
funniest.
getting the gas out of the truck in the distance.
Yeah. Also, her backing the truck down the hill is one of the scariest scenes I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah, man.
That is one of the most terrifying 2 minutes I've ever seen.
It's like I was watching Sorcerer.
For real. I was mortified. The sound design.
That's a dad word right there.
Yeah.
Mortified.
Mortified.
Mortified kid.
The sound design.
I was mortified.
He does say mortified all
It's
the
a
time.
Boston thing,
Yeah.
man.
But like the sound design, the cinematography, it makes that scene work so well. And she's backing the truck down. She's backing a moving truck down the Hollywood Hills, which are very windy, and it's very steep. It's just incredible. What a great sequence.
With no gas.
With no gas, yeah. Man, unbelievable.
It's pretty fun. It's a great movie.
It's great.
Kind of wraps up our
Wow,
episode.
man.
Director Spotlight on Paul Thomas
3
Anderson.
hours? What was it?
240.
Damn.
Something like that. Something like that. 2.5.
Damn.
You said you wanted to go for like 3.
Yeah.
I'm starting to lose my voice though.
Me too. And the tequila.
The tequila. Man, what a filmmaker. I can't wait to see the rest of his career too. But I mean, he's made some of the best movies.
He's doing pretty good.
He's made some of the best movies this century. He really is a special filmmaker and creative voice in film and cinema. I mean, Paul Thomas Anderson, he's so important to film. Love the guy. Love his movies.
Love the guy. He's a good guy.
He's a good guy. I don't know him personally. I love his movies.
Seems like a good guy.
He's probably a good guy.
Yeah.
He seemed like a hot shot when he was young.
Yeah, he
Like
seemed,
a cocky hot shot.
He seemed like a bit of a egomaniac from what I've read, and I'm sure he'd admit to that. But he seems like he's cooled off a lot. James Cameron was the same. He
Artist, man.
Yeah.
You're the same, man.
Because Kate Winslet said she would never work with him again after Titanic, and then she worked with him on Avatar.
Yeah.
Because he's like, I'm a different person. Like, I'm not a fucking tyrant anymore. And he seems to be like a much more lenient man than he used to be.
He's a lot more chill.
He's very chill. I'm sure Paul's chilled out too.
I'm sure as well.
He seems like a great guy.
I mean, Maya Rudolph's awesome, and she's probably tamed him down a little bit.
Yeah, Maya Rudolph's really funny. She's awesome.
She's a
She
legend.
has some great little bits in his movies. But
Yeah, she does. She's in Inherent Vice.
She's in Licorice Pizza.
Licorice Pizza.
Yeah.
She got some
So they met. He directed an episode of SNL.
That's right. Who hosted
Ben
it?
Affleck.
Ben Affleck. They
Yeah.
did the Fanatic skit.
They did a skit with spoofing Anna Nicole Smith. I don't think young people know who that is. But she was like
She's like an original Kardashian
yeah,
wannabe.
she was like a socialite.
Well, not a Kardashian.
She was a socialite.
Yeah. Well, she married into a socialite.
Yeah. But he directed that whole episode, and that's where they met.
Good stuff. All right, that wraps our episode on Paul Thomas Anderson.
Hell yeah.
Thank you
great.
so much for tuning in. That
Epic.
was so fun. These movies are all terrific. Some of our favorites of all time. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, the best way to help our show is to share us with your friends, family members who love movies, who love cinema, who love TV. I mean, share any of our episodes. Share PTA episode if you have any friends that love PTA, or just in general, just let them know that this show exists.
Sharing is caring.
Sharing is caring. But it's the number one way.
Share the load.
It's the number one way for podcasts to grow. It really is. So share the fucking shit out of our show.
Share the load.
Leave those 5-star ratings and reviews on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, as well as become a patron today at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost Podcast to get all those awesome perks and bonus episodes every week. Thank you so much for tuning into this epic episode, breaking down the career of Paul Thomas Anderson.
See you next time.
This episode was executive produced by our chosen one patrons, Cody Moen, Andrew Hagan, Becca Keene, Benjamin Cook, Calvin Murphy Griggs, Nicholas Martin, Darian, Tyler McFly, and Sal Koching. Our Chosen One patrons are our biggest supporters. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching Raiders of the Lost podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button as well, notifications for sure. Listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, everywhere you can listen to podcasts, and be sure to check out this other content we have on our YouTube channel.